Everyone. I call to order this meeting of the POA board review of the proposed 2019 budget. We have one board member who is not here, Mike Medica. He has a doctor's appointment this morning, but plans to be here shortly. So we will proceed, and hopefully he can get here very quickly. So, Leslie, it's yours.
Okay. Mrs. Hoover, would you please join us at the table? We'll hear first from Director of Recreation, Stacy Hoover. Stacy, give them a minute to find your sheet.
Recreation Department consists of 13 cost centers. We represent the administration department within recreation, recreation maintenance, outdoor recreation, the dog park, the RV park, pickleball, the tennis center, DeSoto Marina, Coronado Center, Coronado Library, the fitness center, the Ponce de Leon Center, Women's Auditorium, and the outdoor pool. Total revenues for 2019 represent a decrease of approximately $104,000 from the 2000. And decreases across departments. The largest revenue decrease are the removal of operating revenues in the outdoor pool of $59,000 and a decrease in revenue at the Coronado Fitness Center of $73,000. The bulk of the fitness center revenue reductions occurs in personal training, $58,000. The remaining amount occurs as a membership types, from paid memberships to insurance reimbursement programs, in the number of draft fitness members. Total compensation. Compensation represents a decrease of 10 bodies and a 1% increase across the division. In 2018, Recreation reduced 7 part-time positions to 3 full-time positions across the division. And while it benefit costs, it stabilizes, reduces the cost of constant training, and we'll continue to look for those opportunities to stabilize our staffing and our turnover in the recreation department. The remaining 6 part-time positions are 3 in the personal training in the fitness center, 1 in recreation maintenance, 2 part-time positions were combined into 1 part-time position, and 2 at the outdoor pool. Operating expenses were reduced $67,000 from the 2018 budget. The 6% reduction includes $40,500 from the removal of the outdoor pool expenses and a reduction of budgeted expenses at the Coronado Fitness Center of just under $30,000. $16,500 for capital in the Recreation Division. 61% of this capital is earmarked for the outdoor pool. This additional $500,000 combined with the $700,000 escrow provides approximately $1.2 million for the project. Tying capital to the comprehensive master plan, the CMP identified $157,000 in maintenance and new capital in 2019 for recreation, page 328 of the CMP. Here's how that breaks out. $92,000 included in the 2019 capital of that $157,000. That includes equipment for the fitness center, theater lighting, house lighting, and kitchen and sound equipment. $65,000 was moved to out years from 2019 for 3 items: a golf simulator, which we're not sure that that's what we want to do with this facility, additional pontoon rental boat at the marina, and lobby furniture. $46,000 was rebudgeted from 2018, and that's the carpet at the Washington Activities Building and the ball machine at tennis. And if you'll remember, we moved those out in order to complete the tennis maintenance project that we just completed. And $29,000 was added. That $29,000 is for replacement of tables, chairs, for Casa de Carta under the new lease that we're currently negotiating. The total from this category ends up being $167,000, or $10,000 more than what the CMP projected. The comprehensive master plan also identified $217,000 in maintenance and new capital in development, and that's CMP pages 345 and 346. The recreation development projects breaks out $2,000 included in the 2019 budget for capital. That's for trails, mountain bike trails, and park and beach improvements. $165,000 was moved to out years for further consideration, and that's specifically for the racquetball courts and an additional playground area over at the family recreation area, and those were moved out for additional study. $10,000 was removed from the 2019 CMP for the Balboa Dock addition, and total for this category is $52,500, or $10,000 under the CMP. The comprehensive master plan also identified $938,000 in maintenance and capital in building and grounds that are directly related to the recreation department. $97,000 of that breaks out into capital for recreation. The Casa de Carta flooring, the North Pond seal, the Cortez bath remodel, the skylight and beam painting, and the the Coronado Tennis Center pavilion flooring are all identified in that $97,000. $31,000 in the comprehensive master plan is found in the maintenance and operation budgets for the recreation department. Small maintenance and operating projects that don't meet the level of capital. $250,000 was removed for duplicate work. Both building and grounds and recreation identified a repair at the Ponce de Leon Center, and because both of those were included in the CMP budget, you had a duplicate of $250,000 there. And then $15,000 was reduced for cost savings from the 2019 budgeted projects. The remaining $315,000 was moved to out years for further consideration. While there are multiple projects, 3 of those projects make up the bulk of that $350,000. For $280,000, we had budgeted to repair the pond, the marina dock, and the stage floor at Ponce de Leon Center. The total for this category is $97,000 in capital, $15,000 under the CMP's projections. While these 3 CMP categories, recreation for $167,000, development for $52,000, and building and grounds for $97,000, combined to make that $316,500 that you see in our capital above and beyond the outdoor pool. 92% of all of our capital spending is for maintenance and land improvements and recreation, and 8% is for new equipment. So how does the Recreation Department support our enterprise goals for 2019? Recreation has an either direct or indirect responsibility for the following CMP pillars and their relationship to the 2019 enterprise goals. Maintaining our current value. Capital spending on infrastructure to protect our value and strengthen our financial health. Again, 92% of all of our recreation spending Lake Balboa dredging plan, protecting value and welcoming experience. The beach and swim area cleanup will be taking place during the Lake Balboa drawdown. Addressing service gaps, Wi-Fi in Coronado Center and the Ponce de Leon Center in order to protect value and provide that welcoming experience. And lastly, creating new value through innovation. Holding a deliberative engagement session on the CMP's Coronado Center ideas in order to build trust and support from the community. Fees are recommended for holding for year 2 at lawn bowling, the dog park, and our rental facilities, Coronado Center and Ponce de Leon Center. Fees are also holding at pickleball in order to hold its first year of operations. Fees are recommended for increase at the Coronado Fitness Center, 2.5% on the daily fee. Coronado Tennis Center, daily fee goes up 3%. Bocce ball is a 30% increase with the renovation and the installation of new courts this year. Library, for the first time in 4 years, is recommended for a 50% increase. RV park is recommended for a 100% increase, which sounds large, except when you consider the current fee is 50 cents. With the renovation that's planned at the end of 2018, our recommendation for a fee there is to increase to $25 per night. The pavilions, half-day rental goes up 3%, and the setup teardown cost per man-hour goes up 3%. Fees in the Recreation Division are set by formula, and those formulas were developed by the Recreation Subcommittee in 2017 and are based on either the daily or the market rates. So when you hear 3%, 2.5%, 5%, the remainder of our fees are all set on a percent based on that daily fee. The strategy by the Recreation Divisions includes a goal fee for tennis, fitness, pickleball, lawn bowling, and bocce ball. Each of those have a fee that we're working towards. So each year we'll have a slight increase till we can reach those goal fees. Strategy for the rental facility is a slight increase every other year, alternating those increases between the Coronado Center, Ponce de Leon Center, and the pavilions each year. In 2019, the pavilions are recommended, and Coronado Center, Ponce de Leon Center are recommended to hold at 2018 rates. The ultimate goal is to reduce the subsidy in each of our amenities each year until such time as the cost of that amenity impacts the usage or the amenity begins to provide for its future replacement. So solutions sought by the Recreation Department. These are also known as Tom's challenges. So Tom, I have 3 challenges in the Recreation Department. Our first category is usage. The Coronado Fitness Center represents 46% of overall division revenues. Declining usage, a shift from paid memberships to insurance reimbursements, and then change from draft memberships to using or driving into hot springs has an impact on this facility. Weather is always a factor, especially for outside amenities, and programs from tennis to pickleball to boat rentals are all impacted by weather. My second challenge is staffing. Finding, training, and then keeping entry-level positions in this job market is tough. Changes we've made include combining part-time staff for full-time positions and evaluating positions to use one staff member across different divisions. Additionally, a place to go is a challenge. Once entry-level positions are filled, now the following step positions filled with long-tenured employees. And finally, creating a plan for the retirement and or loss of those long-tenured employees with their knowledge as they contemplate retirement is crucial. And lastly, projections. Opening and operating amenities without history, trends, and or knowledge of their revenue potential or their expense pitfalls requires careful planning, conservative and constant monitoring. Are there any questions?
There's a difference in somebody pays for the Coronado Center versus insurance reimbursement. Is there a difference, and how much is that?
So we have a confidentiality agreement, and that is something that I know that Leslie would be able to share with you guys in executive session. but we sign a confidentiality agreement with those insurance companies, and we're not able to share those reimbursement rates. At this time, the reimbursement rate covers the same cost as an annual. If you come to the fitness center, but where you might have used to buy a fitness center annual, and then if you only came once or twice a month, I still had your annual fee. Now when you come once or twice a month, I only get paid once or twice a month. And the fitness center, if you come Monday, Wednesday, and Friday between 6 and 10, we're packed 12 hours a week. The remaining time that we're open, we have plenty of room for growth, and what we need is growth.
This may be a tough question. You mentioned the fees and the target of the fees raising every other year or so.
Yes.
And the object, of course, is to reduce the subsidy.
Yes.
I assume the object is to reduce the subsidy to zero. Would be nice.
The key would actually be to get it where they would be able to save some money to pay for repairs. To be honest with you, we have some subsidies that can probably get to that point, and in fact, in the regulation that I know that will actually break even or make money. The goal would be to reduce those subsidies as low as possible, but there are some that are just not going to make money.
Is there any target date for some of these facilities?
Yes.
And your fees, maintenance, and subsidies?
We started a 5-year plan in 2017, so this would be our 3rd year going into 2019. In order to reach those target levels for a fee in fitness and tennis that would get us to break even. What we're finding in 2018, with the increase in fees at the fitness center especially, our usage dropped. If we see that again in 2019 by raising the fee 3% or 2.5%, and get another drop in usage, our subsidy won't drop. Instead, it'll go up again. So it's finding what that medium is to what people will pay versus the value that they perceive that they're getting from that amenity and the cost of that amenity. And I will say the fitness center is my largest cost center. It is also by far my largest compensation. What I make in revenue is what I pay in compensation at that facility. And if you've been there in the evenings, there's a lifeguard and one lady or gentleman at the front, and that's how that facility runs with 2 people. It's just a large facility. It has a lot of expense.
Thank you.
So Stacy, you said you have a 5-year plan for your, is there a way we can get a copy of that 5-year plan and kind of see where we are in the progression of it?
Sure.
And in addition, maybe some of your notes that you went through, because they're obviously much more extensive than what we have here in the budget. Can we get a copy of that too, to kind of look over
Is
as
that
well?
the same one you go over in recreation committee?
Similar to the statistics report, I actually broke out the capital to the CMP.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to see. That was an awful lot of numbers early in the morning, and I'm only 1 cup of coffee in, so that's good. Thanks.
Stacy, good morning. Thank you for all that detail. I've heard it about 3 or 4 times, being liaison to the Recreation Committee. With the idea of trying to get as close to the subsidy as possible, is there any plan to stop some of the amenities? Is there any way that you could say, well, gee, enough, we're spending way too much money on this, we can't do it anymore?
There are no plans within my department right now for those recommendations. Of course, those would all be recommendations that would come before the board before we would close an amenity. What I would say is we have gained several amenities over the last few years, and we watch those to ensure that those are ones that we don't, or we try not to subsidize. A good example of that is the dog park. So the dog park was started by a volunteer organization. The land was donated by the POA. That volunteer organization operated the dog park for several years with support for staff from the recreation department. And then last year, that went over to or the year before it was turned over to the POA for a partial year operation. In 2018, this is our first year to fully operate the dog park. The dog park is operating in the black. It is one of our amenities that is subsidized.
Can you share with us the cost of the dog park for the recreation department?
So the cost for the dog park specifically is in the ground covering that we put in. It's the labor to go by every single day and empty the trash cans. It's the maintenance of the fence. It's the maintenance of the electronic door locks. It's the water bill and the electric bill for those facilities, as well as non-capital typically, but improvements that we make to that facility. I believe their maintenance budget is around $12,000 in expenses, and they're currently bringing in just under $10,000 in revenue, but we're holding those expenses. Therefore, they're actually in the black this year.
You mentioned a couple of things that I'd like to probe a little. Personnel, your ability to get and retain people.
Yes, sir.
You said there was a challenge. What are the challenges? Is it compensation? Is it just availability? What's driving that problem?
Most of the positions in the recreation department are entry level, therefore they're minimum wage. So when you're offering a minimum wage job, and there are a lot of positions in recreation that can be filled with younger, so 16, 17, 18, and you're competing for those jobs, a Walmart, or a McDonald's, or any other employer that's paying $10 an hour. It's harder to fill those positions. Who are willing.
You said you didn't think those amenities that would never make the black. Which ones are they?
I think the Coronado Center Library will never be in the black. This is the first year we've pulled that out so that we can really examine what the subsidy is in each of our facilities. We did that with several. Outdoor recreation, the pavilions, bocce, lawn bowling, Grove Park, the beaches, all of those are combined into outdoor recreation. Is in outdoor recreation. Those are it costs to clean every day and to keep them up in the cap. The tests are that they're trying to get as close as possible to break.
If you bring outdoor amenities together, what's the
Outdoor recreation.
I know, but you said bocce ball, lawn bowling.
They're all grouped together. So bocce ball, lawn bowling. In 2018, I believe lawn bowling brought in just under $6,000 in revenue. If you'll remember, we put $75,000 into capital 3 years ago. It's just, pavilions are the same way. We're spending capital in 2019 if the budget is approved for the pavilion. We bring in about $10 to $15, maybe $20,000 in pavilion rental a year.
I guess what I would say with regard to subsidy, I don't look at subsidy as a bad word by any stretch of the imagination. I think it becomes bad when it becomes a result of efforts and not a planned effort. So what I mean by that, I guess, is that there's value, I think, to every property owner that these amenities exist. To some degree or another, there is some value to every property owner. Therefore, I think subsidization out of the assessments is not an inappropriate thing. It's just a matter of to what degree do we want to subsidize these. So I'm not one who is pursuing break even on every amenity. I would not seek that, but would welcome maybe some plan subsidization discussions. What is appropriate for the fitness center? What is appropriate for bocce ball, whatever the case may be, and talk from that term. So if we think a 10% subsidization on bocce ball is fine, then what fees would get us there, right? What cost control would get us there, and kind of drive it that way.
Stacey, I'd like to compliment you on your presentation, but I do have a question. You've thrown a lot of figures at us. I think I missed what your plans are for the putt-putt golf course. Would you share that again?
Sure. So mini golf will actually open on Friday of this week, and that's budgeted in 2018.
Okay. Is there a fee now? Going to be a fee to use it?
There has been. So when we open pickleball in September, there is a $3 per round fee for mini golf. And now that I think about it, I don't know that that's in the fee schedule. We implemented it in 2018, and I don't think I included it in 2019. So there's $3 per round for mini golf. We do have a revenue line item for that in the budget, but I can't remember actually putting that in the fee schedule. So that would be my oversight.
I saw some people over the weekend putting over there, and I didn't know if they had to go there what the situation.
No, but they probably had to go around all the paint buckets because we're not quite open yet. And we put the string up, but they still play. So.
Thank you.
Stacy, one of the examples that you can use that where subsidy is going to have to be, because you're never break even, and that is trails. You know, we don't charge for trails, and yet it costs us a lot of money to get the trails up and so forth. The trails liaison for a couple years. I understand all what you do with that.
It's very true. One of the things that I would point out, and not to disparage public utilities in any way whatsoever, people move to Hot Springs Village and they expect their water to work and they expect their toilet to flush. They're not going to move here if there's not something else for them to do besides flush their toilet. So while recreation is a large subsidized division, and we understand that, we're working hard to reduce that subsidy, or at least get that subsidy to what we consider to be manageable or acceptable, and then try to break cost centers.
Stacey, what to drive more volume to the Coronado Center and other places where you're just having trouble getting usage?
So the Coronado Fitness Center specifically, Amy Holloway, Cassandra Booth, and Deb Johnson, so the manager and the two supervisors in that facility, are working on plans. What is costs? And as you can see, one of the things in the 2018 to 2019 budget was a reduction of almost $30,000 in expenses there. So they're evaluating both their expenses, their up with programming that might be in some dynamic pricing, similar to what we've done in golf, where you have an afternoon fee available. You come into the fitness center after 2 o'clock, you're lucky to see 15 people, especially on a Thursday or a Tuesday, unless there's a specific class going on. So what we're trying to do is figure out how to drive growth, how to drive people to the fitness center. And again, we talk of that one because it's our largest cost center. In addition to that, tennis in the morning and league play, they're packed, but in the afternoon and in the evenings, they're not. And Bob is working on that with lessons and adult lessons and free-for-alls and all sorts of other plans together, just like Deb and their plans together.
And are you considering putting a cover over the pickleball courts to be able to expand there?
I am not considering a cover until such time as I see usage. And we've been open a month today, and so those usage numbers are not going to give us an idea until probably mid-18. How much is it being used? And here's a great example of that. If it's being used 1,000 times a day, but it's being used by 100 people,
Is that a barrier to tournament play that would draw people in from the outside? don't know that it
It would be any different than a tennis courts. None of our tennis courts are covered, and yet we have multiple tournaments every year. Some of them get canceled out, and it's no different than golf. You play golf in the rain as well, and I know it's unrealistic to expect a course to be covered. But I think for us, the comparison between pickleball and tennis has to be made. And right now, tennis has, or is projected to have, $25,000, $30,000 more in revenue than pickleball. So as we look at as we look directly at revenue in pickleballs, it will tell us how play will drive the cover, the discussion of the cover, of a cover.
Are our fees for tennis and pickleball and others for non-members, are they market-based, or are they getting there?
Our non-member fees are based on a 60% increase from a member fee. And our member fees are based on market rate for a member of that athletic club. There are not a lot of pickleball comparisons that can be made. Now, we've looked at other communities such as ours, a lot of them included in their $300 a month assessment. We don't have a $300 a month assessment, so pickleball is not free. What we do have is based on other communities in mostly the western part of the United States, so they don't deal as much with rain as we do here, Arizona specifically. We've based our rates on their member fees for pickleball, and we're trying to see how they work here in Hot Springs Village.
So you probably caught it, but I just want to make it a point. Stacy mentioned the dredging on Lake Balboa, and then the dredging at the Balboa Beach. And this was an example where Stacy and Brad got together after our Forward Together forum. That was actually a suggestion by someone in that forum that said, hey, while y'all are doing that, why don't you come and fix the beach and pull that sand back up? And so, you know, it's kind of like one of those, you should have thought about it, but you didn't until someone mentioned it. And I applaud both of you for hearing that and immediately acting. One of our members asked. So thank you for that. Okay, next up we will hear from Hussein, Director of Food and Beverage. It's on page 18. You might try that one, Maggie. There you go.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Well, I'm going to this way. Page 18. First line is revenue. Revenue consisting of Coronado Grill, Diesel Club, Balboa Club, Lounge, and Magellan, Coronado Center Bar, and Ponce de Leon Bar. The food and beverage budget, actually, Liz and I working together on it is conservative in its revenue. Projection and ties back to current revenue trend. We hope that 2019 will lead to revenue increase beyond what is budgeted, which would require us to re-evaluate this plan should we get busier than we budget for. Increasing revenue will strengthen financial health in the village. My team and I worked to increase revenue by offering different variety of special event, entertainment, menu selection, providing a great service and products will build property owner trust and support. Element 5 CMB 5.4.2 program dining events that highlight our upcoming chefs and from nearby culinary programs, local breweries, local Instagram committee, and we are doing right now with local brewery to have a special event, beer and wine and beer with the Soto Club special event. Compensation. This compensation plan is based on the hour of operation projected for 2019 for each facility and associated revenue projection. Operating expense. The operating expense budget for 2019 has been reduced by 10%. This will be accomplished by reducing cost of goods sold and other operating expenses and improving inventory with inventory management. The capital project is for 2019, 35,000, 20,000 for the Soto Club, carpeting and seating and divider around the dining room area. 10,000 for Casa Coronado table and chair in the dining room area. 5,000 for Milligan and bonds to replace flooring in the kitchen. Also, enhancing and taking care of our facility will add value and lifestyle to the property owner. Hiring a full-time manager at the Soto has increased usage, revenue, and customer satisfaction. I'm going to closing my statement by saying, as Stacy said, in food and beverage, it is tough business. We're still challenging for finding employees and actually quality personnel. If you like food and beverage, you have to work there, and you have to like this kind of business to be in, to proceed, and like people's, like, are in the people business, you know. So.
Some of the things that you and Magdi discussed in the way of labor and cost of goods sold. I know you spent a lot of time together, but would you just give us kind of a 5-minute rundown of how you guys dove into those numbers?
Magdi kind of indicated we started with what are the hours of operation, how long were we going to be open, and we broke it down into the seasonal. Because we do have definitely seasonal business here, and you have to take that into account. And then we really broke down to how many people, based on current usage and where we're at, how many people do you really need there? How many cooks or chefs do you need? And we really dove into the hours that would be required to have to customers and food quality, but not make sure we had to make sure we didn't have people standing around when we didn't have the need for it. And we really focused on that and created a very detailed staffing plan that indicates who's there when, how many hours total we're covering in a year to determine how many full-time or part-time people we needed for the facility, and we broke that down by facility. On the revenue side, we also really sat down and went, okay, lunchtime on Wednesday. How many people do we normally get at lunchtime on Wednesday at Magellan? Okay, and on average their meal costs $6. So the revenue projections all break down to that very finite level by facility, by day, by season. And then once we did that, we kind of went back to what is this year looking like? And are those projections reasonable based on what we're currently seeing? And we kind of went back and forth to make sure that we weren't. So when Magdi talks about the revenue projections being conservative, they really are. They're, which is why you see such a large drop from the current year budget to the proposed budget on that revenue side, is because we said, you know what, the revenue hasn't been there, and so we've got to really make some solid projections based on what's really happening right now, and then get our staffing in line to go along with that, as well as that cost of goods sold and that operating percentage. There's industry standards for where your cost of goods sold should be in a food service business. There's industry standards on where your labor should be as a percentage of sales in the food and beverage business. And so we really tried to get that down to that level and make sure that we were going to meet those targets.
Have we totally given up on the idea of having outside vendors run these restaurants?
I'll have to go back and look at my sheet, but there is actually outside vendors running several of the facilities, and that is also included in this budget here. Those are actually still subsidized to some extent because of the amount that we are charging on those leases.
I can probably speak a little bit to that as well. If you noticed, we have inconsistently been able to run larger facilities to any degree of profit, for sure, to any degree of consistency, whether it be service or food. And so, no, at this time we don't have any plans for our two flagship operations, Granada and DeSoto, to turn those back over. We believe they're stabilizing. And if, certainly we would always be open if there's someone who has a strong track record of success in our type industry, because it is very difficult to try to keep a restaurant that's at a golf course off the beaten path. DeSoto's a little bit easier, Granada's a little bit harder, and some of the other ones a little bit more difficult, to keep those running with someone else. So, not yet, but we're always open.
So what do we feel is an appropriate level of subsidization for food and beverage over the long term?
Well, I don't have that answer totally yet. I can tell you that we've spent anywhere from $1 million to $1 million a year when we just had DeSoto and Balboa Club, when Marriott was running it. And that was, put that in today's dollars. I would love to see us be able to break even. I mean, that's my first hurdle I'd love to be able to get to. It's going to be very, very difficult, like I said, in some of those operations unless we do what some of the other, like Bella Vista, they have in one of their golf shops. They basically just have hot dogs. So unless we actually take some of those service levels backwards, we will always be fighting this battle. Yeah.
So as we expand our operations, so now we're running the two flagships, what economies of scale have been built into this budget that result from being able to maybe share a labor pool, being able to acquire and our supply, maybe a volume, and then factored in? Have we squeezed those costs down as a result?
Yes, and that's what we're going to do. We have a centralized inventory thing that MACD's put in place this year, and continue to look at that purchasing plan as a whole and see, are we buying the same thing from two different vendors still? We do have some challenges in that regard because we're operating in two different counties, and not all the vendors come to both counties. You also, all of your liquor and alcohol sales have to be consolidated to one location. So have those set up on bulk time. This into consideration overall. We get reports every month that tell us whether we're breaking cases and doing things like that, and whether we've got consistent pricing at all locations.
Magdi, what intervention on the
events? You mentioned some special events, some beer and wine pairings and that sort of thing, to try to drive volume to these restaurants.
We have entertainment in the weekend most of the time right now at the Soda Club, and lately the usage is become increasing very, very well, especially in the weekend. During the week we have a special private party or different kind of a special event with the new chef we have at the Soda Club. It is really driving a lot of crowd down there. We try to change the menu most of the time, especially in the Grill. We change the menu about 3-4 times a year, and during the fall or the we replace a lot of items in the menu to see which is selling, what is not selling, and we get something different news. Plus what we have to launch special every day, weekly special, and we advertise for, and even if we didn't advertise for the weekly special, we add it to the menu as insert.
Okay, and what do you do beyond the food and beverage to promote to try volume?
Right now we advertise at the Village Voice magazine weekly. I have an arrangement with them for the Granada and the Soro Club, and we start actually doing most of it word of mouth around. When you come to have dinner and it's crowded and the music and they're talking about and bring some friends.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, those promotional costs are in this budget, or are they in?
Those are in his. You know, that marketing is in his.
She's done for the moment. The carpeting and the dividers, I anticipate that will help a great deal at DeSoto.
It will help that. That's
Yes.
what I hear most of the time, the acoustic and the sound.
And the intimacy of the place, that will help. And how soon after the budget's approved are you going to be doing that?
Beginning of the year, when it's slow down.
Would you consider?
Cindy.
It's difficult to hire quality employees in both and DeSoto. I have a lot of experience with Granada, and I have to tell you, the employees that I've met in Granada particularly are all very high quality. We've gone out there on a Friday night with our Friday night group, and our service has always been good, and so is the food. I've less experience with DeSoto, but you do have some holdover waitresses that are very good that were there before. My concern, I guess, is DeSoto and trying to get it up to the same speed that maybe Granada is, and I've just heard that you're working on that as far as menus and that type of thing. But when I drive down DeSoto, I see very few cars during the week, and it's like, we got to do something to compete with Home Plate. You go to Home Plate, and the parking is full. I don't know whether it's the menu or the waitresses or whatever it is, but that would be something that I think we can maybe work on, is getting DeSoto to be more of the place to go for lunch. So.
Yeah, we are working on that. And most of the employees at the Granada Grill, it is from day one from last year, we're still working there.
To Bill's comment about Home Plate, 60% of his business at the gate. Yes, without that he'd fail. People business.
Yes.
Are we confident you're getting your from your customers? Are the customers really telling you what they want, what's wrong, what they don't?
I got emails I got emails and complaint, and I answer them. And I meet with them one-on-one most of the time, and we
and try to make everybody happy. I mean, it is hard to satisfy 100%, you know. Sometimes you get...
I agree, but
yeah.
I sit there and I'll be there with a group and they don't like this and they don't like that. I said, have you told the management? No, I haven't told the management. So,
you're right. If I didn't hear about it, or the managers don't hear about it, we cannot correct it. I just
answer question. You know, he had dinner and his food was cold, but he didn't say anything to anybody because he didn't want to make a. I mean, if he didn't.
I just feel staff is what's wrong. Not walk up there, is your food okay? And you can tell by the server's face, and this is not just our restaurants, but everywhere.
Wow, yeah.
This is just a standard question. They don't really care what you say.
Actually, I have a meeting with all the food and beverage division last Monday at the Soto Club, and we talk about a lot of issues. And
One of them is the issue is visit with the customer, talk to them, ask what's wrong. If you have a plate came back not finished, or how's the food, and relate it to the floor at the time when we can get more feedback.
The price of the food, everything that you're trying to accomplish, to me, is coming from your customer feedback. And as long as you continue to do that, then I don't think we have any complaints other than, gee, I wish the subsidy was lower.
yeah, we're working on that, and I'm really working hard on that to minimize that subsidies. I don't like to have an operation and losing money on it or subsidy on it. If I can break even or can make some money.
All my background is clubs and restaurant and profit, and we make money. But
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a question. 2018 budget, it's 33,000 operating loss, but the real question I have is what is it that was budget? What's your projection for actual for this year?
It is. Okay. We tested it already. Look at these, which is where we're currently.
I believe right now we're about $100,000 over budget on meeting that bottom line subsidy in food and beverage.
And so Andy and I have done a lot of work in budget process as well to try to figure out how to cut back to draw that.
Do you think you'll end up at about three and change for the year, roughly, as a result of having to take over an unplanned operation at the Soda Club? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, at least that. It may be a little bit higher, but we're trying to prevent it from getting any higher.
Okay, so let's say it's 4.
The delta, I'm just picking numbers. So the real delta between actual this year and next year is a much larger drop.
And your expense. Now, I'm hearing in here. So could you say again, either one, or what are the big things that are in your mind or in your plan that is causing this decrease?
Food cost and labor cost.
So better buying?
Yes, then start using 2 vendors. I'm looking for more vendors to buy from them.
And it's pricing and purchasing of the food?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned you did kind of like an 80-20 on how you take a look at where your actual expenses are and so on and so forth. Did you mention, and like I say, I'm having a hard time, is there going to be, are you considering saying that it'd be 6 days a week, you're only going to be open 4, and it'll be the one that's
The one where we get the most traffic, or is it going to be every night? I just want to.
Some location will be, right now we're closing Monday in both locations, but the bar is still open
And limited dogs and today we open lunch in both places and we close dinner. We expect, and it's depending
weather and
So the answer is yes, you're thinking about not being open every night and or just opening when you have the most traffic usually?
not quietly. No, it's just we open when we have a special or we have, like buffet Wednesday and Thursday we open, and we don't want to close to let somebody walk into the door and say we are closing.
Yeah, one of the things that we've looked at, of course, we have to, it's easier to do that in off seasons. It's harder to do that when we have visitors here and nothing's open and they don't know where to go. So we attempt at least during the busy season to try to have pretty standard hours, except for like you said, Monday or whatever. We let have definitely need to look at that, being sensitive to the fact that we don't want to run off our visitors, but certainly, and being sensitive to the fact that our members also, when they play, taking a look at when those groups are, to Bill's point about going down to soda. I know when I've gone to lunch, there's several groups that go to Soda Club, and they go pretty much most days. And so even though it's, one table of 8 or 10, I mean, that's for them to go. And so we're just trying to be our golfers there and when our golfers there.
I think one thing we're going to see too that we haven't seen yet year to increase in special events. On the outside,
around the holidays, you're going to see an increase in those special events on the nights that are usually slow at our food and beverage
facilities. And having the DeSoto Club, which we haven't had in the past, it's the largest facility we have around to host something like that. So I think we might see an uptick in that revenue side going into the holiday season, and we don't have that history yet. So
I'm wondering, I think, right? I mean, our facilities are all golf clubhouses, and that doesn't appeal to everybody always, and that sort of thing. Combined with gates, combined with maybe an aging community. I guess I say that to wonder aloud, would we ever consider bringing in a turnaround expert to say, I'm looking at it objectively, here's the half dozen things I think maybe you could do to either increase your demand for what you're selling or reduce your expenses, just as a kind of one-time consultation shop.
Well, we somewhat did that with a very brief contract with Trim, and we received kind of those suggestions, which is part of where we received the information about the percentages, the cost of goods sold percentages, the labor percentage. We did an exercise there. It may be time to do that again, but I think we're on the right paths.
one thing that I know Maggie can explain a lot too is that this community is very price sensitive, more so than other places. And I know he experienced that coming in. So it's
finding how to provide high quality food at low reasonable costs,
so that's yet another reason why it's a tough nut to crack right here in the village.
Unique to us. So,
As I recall, when Tree came in, I don't know whether this is supposed to be funny or what. Pretty cheap drunk. Yeah. In other words, we were giving away the stiff drinks for very cheap prices, and I think that is one of itself was one of the big opportunities in terms of revenue and cost and profit, effect on profit. So you've done a lot in that area too, is that not correct?
Yes, sir. There is a price effect for every location.
Am I on? You're on. Okay. I would just like to say our contract with Trin was about a year. We had them come in several times, and there was very few things that we were not doing that they suggested. And we did, do the things that they went to each facility and acted like the mystery shopper or whatever, from the front to the back, to see some of the things that we could do, because we know food service has always been tough here, and we've had $1 million subsidy. So at 233, it looks pretty good, but still, it's, like you say, it's a tough nut to crack here.
Yeah, it is, and I would like to see us drive to zero subsidy on this. I think food and beverage, unlike some of the other things that we offer here, are also offered in the private sector, where there are no subsidies. I have to be very careful about what I say here, but I think there's a genuine appropriateness to try to drive aggressively food and beverage to a zero subsidy for that reason.
I just have one comment, back to your chief drunk comment. The golfers I know to ounce how much is in each pitcher, and if the pitcher is larger here than it is here, and if they charge $1 more here, they'll play golf here, and they'll go to where the beer is cheaper and you get more.
You are right.
Actually drive. I don't
You're
get
right,
it.
100%.
Yes, it's a sad thing.
Yes.
We digress. All right, so, any other questions? Any other comments? Maggie, thank you so much.
Mr. Meredith. Mr. Meredith. Next up, Brad Meredith from Lakes. Page 19.
Good morning. Our 2019, we'll just start with the revenue. 2019 sales, we're projecting 125. Our income, that's from decal sales and from daily collections, what we collect at the boat ramps for each one, or what we collect at the POA office when folks come in. That's due to we're asking for a 5% increase on our 2018 fees to move closer to market value for communities similar to ours. There's a very drastic difference between us, and that's probably the closest one that best compares to us. We didn't want to make too big a jump in that because we went up from 2017 to 2018. We're going up from 2018 to 2019. We just want to continually progress up to where we think we should be. And Bella Vista Village is, for big boats, is, and the majority of ours are bigger. It's dramatically higher. So we're moving toward that now. And one of the big things with our increase in our budget, biggest things, and a very good thing for 2018 was a dramatic increase in compliance. We worked closely with the compliance department, part of the police department, Chief Middleton and his folks over there. And at last count, when I talked with Miss Cameron the other day, we had one boat that was still outstanding. So that's fantastic for us. That was what she told me, one boat that was outstanding. We visited 16 boats lots the other day, me and 2 weeks ago, and we were one owner. It may not be one boat, but one owner is still outstanding on that. So we're doing very, very well. We're doing well on that. We're looking forward to it. One of the things that we also proposed was a $20 fee for herbicide application at homeowners, residents. We do that. We have for as long as I can remember. Takes a couple, 1 or 2 people. We go out, we spray Roundup or whatever it be, chemical application to take care of those for homeowners. It's a new fee for 2019. One of the things that we're going to look into beyond 2019 is potentially utilizing an irrigation usage permit, something for homeowners that are using water out of the lake. We're looking into that. We're going to do counts when we do our compliance surveys for 2019 to see how many folks are actually using water out of each lake, and see what we can try to derive from that and see where we can go from there. So we're expecting probably a 6% increase. I think I think our 2018 revenue is probably right now over our projected 2019 revenue. So I think it was really, really close last time I looked, and it is. Thank you, Liz. So we expect that to be even higher. We really do. So the only thing that we didn't increase, we didn't suggest was the daily use fee, because we went up 100% last year from $5 to $10, and $10 is anybody else, all the Coral Lakes are $5. So we didn't suggest an increase on that.
Hey, Brad.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we have everybody turn to page 46 if you're talking about the fees?
Sure.
And would you mind to describe your some of your knowledge about what Bella Vista charges on these?
Page 46 is the fees. It's under the fees tab. Just while you're talking.
Yes, ma'am. You can see, I mean, you can see one of our big things was, we have collection boxes at every boat ramp. We charge $5, and we started that in 20, I believe we put the first. It's been a big success. It's helped folks at the boat ramp to client, whether they be a homeowner, they someone from the village. You know, we expect everybody, whether you're a homeowner or not, to put money in the box if you're using the lakes. And we've had an increase in compliance due to an increase in compliance officers, and in we're visiting lakes and those kind of things. Other than the top line right there, you see a 5% increase across each and every one of those, whether it be boats with motors, without motors, day pass, or 7-day pass for owners and residents, and then the other. Bella Vista Village has a breakdown on how they charge people on how they do boat size. They have a non-power boat that's $20, and it goes up all the way up to like $210 for a boat and larger. So they have 4 different, and I have it written down. They have 4 different breakdown powered boat, and it starts from like 12 to 16 feet, and there's a 16 to 20, so I guess there's 4 altogether, and then 20 foot and above. But they start at like $110, and it goes up to $210, I believe is what it is. So there's a big variation in where they are on their annual and where we are. Yes, ma'am. Compensation is going up. We asked for 4%. Part of that is due to a 3% increase, salary increase, and then we're asking for a part-time lake staff employee. Probably run that through the summer and allow us to do some things and kind of split up. An additional employee was a big help. We can get things done while we're doing some things in the office, answering phone calls, visiting with homeowners, and those kind of things. This would allow us to do those and to split up and to do other mechanical removal or things that need to be done. Our big, we'll say, is Balboa dredging. And with that challenge comes a significant increase in our operating expenses. We are expecting roughly $500,000 hydraulic dredging, removal of material on Lake Balboa, and about $50,000 for mechanical removal. That's kind of where we are with the numbers and with the volume of material that we've figured on the lake. We visited part of our dredging process. Our dredging process has been evolving over the last few years, and our planning for that process is ever evolving. Before we dredge and before we come up with numbers, we actually visit all the coves. We got with the GIS department that we work with, and we put a 25-meter grid over the entire lake. And all of those grid intersections in those coves, we go and visit that, and we actually probe the material to determine how much material is in the coves. And we figure that, quantify that volume. So we have real numbers to work with, not just my neighbor says we have 4 feet of material. Not to say that your neighbor's wrong, but we want hard numbers to work with. So that's how we come up with these. That's how we come up with our numbers, and you know, we're asking for another basically $500,000. And the reason we're not asking for more is it actually cost us. We actually paid about $55,000 out of our 2018 operating budget for mechanical and hydraulic removal material on Lake Coronado. So there's a little give and take in that, and how we operate with that. Because we are asking for so much, we took our capital out, we pushed it out. Our big thing is increasing access for homeowners on the lakes. We did that by putting the new dock in on Lake Balboa at the boat ramp, a complete new system tear out, put a new one in. We put the fishing pier in. One of the things we talked about on the fishing pier on Balboa out past the beach is doing some modification on that, changing it up, making it little bit more user-friendly. One of the things that we've even talked with Recreation and Stacy about is maybe putting a kayak access point out there on it. Some way of getting on and off, in and out of a kayak from that. That's something that we're looking into. But we're pushing that out to 2020 and beyond so we can concentrate on protecting property owner value. And one of the big challenges that we've had for 2018 that we certainly hope to not have for 2019 has been vegetation on some of the small lakes, Lake Sophia and Lake Maria. I say Lake Sophia quietly because Miss Leslie lives on Lake Sophia. So, but I certainly don't want to have to deal with that again next year. But vegetation grows dramatically and quickly in some of these small, so they get a lot of sunlight down to the bottom and shallow water. So it's something that we're still dealing with. We actually treated some on Lake Sophia last week. But that's something that we continue to work on. As I said, we're adding part-time staff. One of the things that I'm going to check on this fall and working on is to looking for some grant opportunities, something where we can get some money to maintain our lakes. There may be some federal money out there, there may be some state money. That's something that we're looking into. If we can come up with something like that, then we might be able to take out some of that operating expense later on. And one of the things with this is that dramatic increase in operating expenses directly related to the dredging. It's not about our daily operations. So this is kind of a one-time big spike, and then we'll be back down much lower for next year. One of the things that we're going to do while we're doing this, the dredging, is we're going to go around and clean out all the gabions. They collect sediment. If you don't know what they are, they're rebar barricades that have a lock in them that allow the water to move through that, but it collects the material behind it. And the majority of those they're all full and they need to be cleaned. So while we've got the lake down, or we've got the equipment here, we're going to be cleaning all those out. We've got 11 around the lakes, all the lakes, and we're going to do them all while we're working. Just get them cleaned out, get them back where they should be. I do know that one of those 11 has been broken. I don't know what we're going to have to do to repair it. And what kind of permitting might be required for us to repair it, because we're building a structure in a moving body of water. So that's something that we're working on, something that we're moving forward to remedy those issues. Working on a fish stocking program. We get lots of questions about fishing in the lakes, obviously. One of the biggest questions, what people ask for, is crappie. Our lakes are very clear. You've been on our lakes, you've seen that. Crappie do well in clear water where they have plenty of habitat. That's another thing that we've been working on. We've put a lot of fish habitat in most of the lakes. In that process, they do well with kind of turbid water with a lot of nutrients in it. Our lakes are very clear and they're nutrient poor. Doesn't mean they're in bad shape. It's just a characteristic of clear water. And then we're increasing on the habitat. So that's something that we're working on. If we can provide them habitat, hopefully they can maintain their own populations, and eventually we may not have to supplement that. But the way crappie are here, we have to, if they're clear water, we have to supplement that. So that's something that we're working on. Another thing we work on is grass carp. We need to be on a rotation on how we stock grass carp in the lake. Grass carp have a high mortality rate, and they're not really very intelligent. So when the water gets up, they go over the dam and we lose them. So we need to be continually working on stocking those fish and keeping them in place. So just the way they are. Anyway, so that's where we're looking at for 2019. What we've got going on moving forward. So be happy to answer any questions.
As liaison to the Lakes Committee, I want to commend this committee. I have been to the board meetings for 6 years and have seen where our funding of lakes efforts was completely abysmal. It was shameful. And I think with Brad's leadership and Katie's participation, it's come a tremendous way. Another thing that we should celebrate is the great working relationship that this committee has with the Anglers Club and the Baitcasters Club and the Balboa Yacht Club to try to advance what it is they're trying to get done and leverage that. So I just want to publicly commend you for that.
One thing that Ms. Cindy mentioned was the clubs. We had about 1,500 hours of volunteer time for the lakes this year on those two clubs, and the fishing clubs and the yacht club, it's been really, really good work on those.
Brad, I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
The first one is, can you explain a little more about the shoreline full spray application, which is new? The second question is, where are you going to put all of the material that you get from the dredging? Where's that going to go?
Okay. The shoreline vegetation application, what we did in the past, we sprayed from property line to property line for homeowner, and we provided that as this is just a revenue increase for the lakes.
Is this on their land or in the water?
It's in the water. We don't spray. We don't spray up on their property. As far as the removal of material, there's limited access on the majority of Lake Balboa, so a lot of that material is going to have to be hauled off. We do have a very large, for lack of a better word, a pit where we haul a lot of material similar to that. I talked with the Public Utilities Director, Mr. Temple, and we're probably going to haul a lot of that material to there. So we'll move it from Balboa to that and the whole idea is to fill in that big hole that's out there, and that's what we're going to do with it.
What about bolstering the island? I just want to follow up on that.
One of the things that we talked about in the past, and we've had lots of questions about, are there two islands on Lake Balboa. One of the concerns with those is that their shorelines are eroding rapidly, especially the small island. We talked with the dredging contractors and another dredge contractor that's done work in the past. One of the things we're exploring is the idea of putting those containment bags like we use for dredging applications and lining the shoreline of those islands with those bags. That'll help stabilize that. We could even put riprap on the top of it to kind of dress up what people see, but those big bags would stabilize that area to hopefully stop that erosion, at least slow it down dramatically.
I know that you're deferring the capital expenditures. Is this the dredging machine that you have talked about? Or are we again going to be renting? And
we've discussed buying a dredge multiple times. We actually even had one of the committee members that actually wrote a white paper on it. We've looked at it every way we can look at it. It may make sense for Balboa for 1 year, but it just doesn't make sense in the long run. By the time you put man hours in it, fuel, maintenance, and everything else that goes with it, it's just we just can't make it work.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Brad, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You brought up a deal about the irrigation that is done off the lakes.
Yes, sir.
Years and years ago, people were supposed to get a permit to do that. We now have them where some of them have such a mess and electrical problems. Is there any way putting in where they have to get a permit to do that?
Actually required to have a permit for that.
Who issues the permit?
That would be permitting inspections. One of the issues that we think, one of the reasons why we want to do this is because we think a lot of these have been put in without permits.
Well, I was on the HCC for 9 years. I don't remember issuing one permit. But
I've been here for 4 years and I haven't signed a permit. I haven't signed my name on one of those permits.
So I think that's something we need to look at.
Right? Yeah, compliance matters.
Yes, ma'am. Something that we're going to look at when we're doing our compliance surveys. That'll be part of it.
But I'm talking about new ones now. We got
exactly
people coming in on the lake. So are they going to be informed they have to get a permit?
They should be informed, yes.
Who's going to do that?
I'll make sure to contact and make sure that happens.
Thank you very much.
We're also required to have a permit for geological as well, yes.
are you thinking of just here, or are you thinking of ongoing revenue year to year?
I'm thinking of ongoing revenue year to year.
Yeah, good.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have 3 quick comments. One, thank you to the 2 committee members. Are there other committee members here?
I did see 2 of them, yes.
Yes, thank you very much for your effort. It's good to see the committee members here. And I know earlier Donna Aylward was here on recreation, so Brad, 2 questions for you. Has anything changed from what was discussed in our Forward Together forum at Lake Balboa in terms of what you plan to dredge?
If the budget goes through as asked, our plan is to dredge every mark on the map.
All right. So if that is reduced,
We will prioritize by the volume of material if the budget is reduced.
differently to control the vegetation and the water levels next year. Can you speak to a little bit of what we've been working on those 2 things?
Absolutely. One of the things that we did with those 2 lakes, we approached them a little bit differently than we probably should have looking back now. We went with a long-term application, multiple applications to keep the concentrations of the herbicide low in the water so it had no impact on the homeowner for 3 months. What we will do in the future, looking back now, is send out emails to those shoreliners and say, we're fixing to burn down the weeds, you need to turn your sprinklers off for 3 days and spray it. That's a dramatic change in our approach. If we have to do that multiple times a year to get the desired result, then the minor inconvenience of turning the sprinkler off for a few days is much better than easily.
And also on the water levels that we talked about, I don't fully have the plan together, but can you just kind of talk about how we want to make sure like Lake Coronado doesn't drop?
One of the things that we've been discussing over the last few months is the fluctuation of water levels on the east end. You know, they're all pretty small, and they're very shallow for the most part, so those water levels are prone to fluctuation with increases in temperature and evaporation and those kind of things. One of the projects that we're exploring, and we should be able to fund the majority of this, at least for the first couple, out of our operating budget. Shouldn't be any big deal at all. One of the things we're exploring is how we can manipulate water to augment the water levels for all of those east end lakes would be the ultimate end. And through that, one of the things that we're going to do this fall is we're going to do some sediment sampling on Isabella and the Magellan Pond, because ultimately this water would come from Balboa into the Magellan Pond, into Isabella, and then move from there to the other lakes. So we want to figure out, and we've had an algae issue on Lake Isabella periodically through the years. And we think that may be due to phosphorus releasing from the sediment. So we're going to do some sediment sampling, figure out what that is, because we certainly, we want to implement this and move forward so we can maintain those water levels, but we don't want to move water and contaminate other lakes at the same time. So we need to figure out what our issue is there before we move on that, but we should be able to fund at least the first couple of those lakes after we complete that process through our operating budget. But moving on to Estrella and Granada, that probably will be a capital expense on those.
Another comment, I know when we were talking about fees and we were talking about some of the revenue challenges for the Lakes Committee, one barrier that was discussed at the time, of course, was the poor compliance rates with sticker purchases.
Yes,
so I'm thrilled to know whoever on compliance helped cause that to happen. Thank you very much. I think that's very important. It looks like that problem's essentially been conquered. But that was a barrier to our desire to increase our fees for the stickers beyond a nominal rate. 5% is a nominal rate when compared with the market in Bella Vista.
You know, this board knows that I'm pretty concerned about the top line number for the entire budget, and wondered if there'd be an opportunity to revisit maybe what those fees ought to be now that we've got the compliance problem conquered.
We would be better off to wait. Compliance continues through next year and attack that. Approach that.
Any other comment? I have a quick question. And Brad, I don't know if you can even answer this question since you. Wait for the question.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say over a period of the next 10 years, what would you think the average cost, not what would you think the average cost would be of maintaining these lakes? Just on an average every year. I know some years go higher, some years lower. But
Right. I think The big cost for our maintaining the lakes is going to be dredging. That's going to be the big factor, and how much material we remove is going to be dependent on how the rainfall and that kind of thing, and how much sedimentation we get. But I think we did pretty well with Coronado with, $55,000. But I don't think for Balboa that's acceptable. So we've got exponentially more. But when it's a hard question. It's a loaded question because some of the lakes we can do mechanically for $20,000 and be completely done. Probably going to be $350,000 to $400,000 a year overall over that time. That would be a ballpark guess, and that's exactly what it is as a guess.
Okay, well, thank you, but I really am impressed over all the years we're talking about buying our own dredging machine, and you finally had enough expertise between yourself and the committees to figure out that we don't really need to buy one, that it's not going to do us any good.
It's a hard pill to swallow, honestly, because we were back and forth with it, and we've had some discrepancies within the committee about it. So it's a hard decision. But looking at the numbers and looking at how much the machine costs and how much it costs to maintain it, how much it costs to man it, and then all the associated figures that go along with fuel and the dredge bags are the big costs, and manpower. So. It's a big expense moving forward. It would probably double our budget annually.
Well, it's just a point that we're using our committees to maximum value. Anybody on it, they're doing. Everybody seems to be an expert in the field.
I remember one other point that you discussed several times in the committee meeting, and that was the desire to put lot location number signs or address signs on every dock. Is there any plan to do that in 2019?
That's something we would like to do. I think we can fund that out of our operating budget as is. One thing that's been lacking for compliance that goes in for other things, and even for safety, is a big issue. Someone have an accident on one of the lakes, they have no idea where they are. There's no associated number, and if you call dispatch and say that you're at 252, that means absolutely nothing to them. So one of our big things was putting an address and a lot block on shoreliner boat docks, and that was one of the things that we were looking at for 19.
Brad, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Or actually, I used to have common property, a little sliver that ran down the side. A lot of water rushed through there. I have a neighbor I see about once a year. Somehow grass got to growing in there, and what I noticed, that grass filtered out a lot of problems. And before there was nothing to stop all that stuff coming down Lake Balboa. I guess what I is everything is down, whether it's the golf courses or the lakes. It's not a good situation, but I think there are things people can do to alleviate that situation, and grass may be one of them.
Are you about the weeds in the lake itself? One of the things.
Well, I'm talking about when the water comes down, the grass catches a lot of things.
The shoreliner grass. Yeah. Yes. One of the things that may directly relate to that, we've stopped spraying water willow on common property. We only treat it on homeowners where homeowners call in. So those areas like that where that water willow's in the back of those coves, hopefully that catches some of that material before it passes out to the homeowners and has an impact on them. But one of the things that we found in our surveys for checking the codes for access was a lot of the access is being used for lawn debris and those kind of things. Well, where shoreliners move that stuff over into those common property areas when we have big rains, that stuff ends up in the lake, and that's what's causing issues for a lot of folks.
Any more questions or comments? You did a great job. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Sikora, Mike Sikora with Building and Grounds. We're on page 20.
I'm being petitioned for a break Let's take a 10-minute break and then let Mike get a little better prepared or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Back at 20 till by that clock.
It is a post something I did. Yes. Thank you.
Well, no, I wouldn't know.
If someone could get control of the chief, we could get started. Let's get started. Mike?
Page 20.
Good morning. Building and grounds, I'm sorry, but in our revenue column that it will continue to be a zero. I will not make this board any money. I don't have any angles or anything as to what we can do. But on the compensation side, we grounds person. In 2019, we will be taking over a lot of the garden club, trimming, weeding, and stuff like that. We hired a guy that can go in multiple stages of between mowing on the ground side to trimming and working with the builder side of the operation. We had a there and we went to full-time. That's the increase on that part of that, and then the merit increase that will be included if everything goes. On the operating side, you'll see operating size is a heat and air guy that we have hired full-time. We're not outsourcing a lot of our heat and air systems change out. Go on this side of the south side of the building here. We just completed 4-unit change out on this building itself. There is 4 units that we change out a month between the fitness center and here. And in November, we are scheduled to do more a unit in the back of the auditorium. Kelly, the heat and air man that we hired, is very experienced. I've seen him in 2 classes already. Using his knowledge and his licensing for continue to do our budget also. A lot of maintenance on this stuff, a lot of maintenance on our buildings. They're old, and what we got to do is continue to maintain them as part of our CMP plan. The value of some of these older buildings is going to be expensive to take care of, but we increase the value every time we change out a heat and air unit. In our capital budget, it's a pretty good increase. You can go to page 24, all those items on page 24, 25, and 26 that are A125 and part of what Stacy talked about earlier as capital projects. They will be combined with from roofing projects to heat and air replacements, flooring. The big cost one this year will be the Woodlands and the Ouachita building, doing a EFS paint, EFS repair, and then an EFS paint over that building. If we approve the budget, that's what I have in this year to make that building stand up longer, look better. We've been working on the parking lot parts of it, getting the bushes away from the building. When you look at that building, you'll see cracks. Those cracks can have moisture come in. With the repairs and with the new paint, that will take care of a lot of our moisture problems. I'm proud to say that majority of our buildings, we have worked on roofs. You know, one of our big roofs for this coming year, 19, will be the Isabella restaurant. It's original roof from when it was built. It's got granules falling off it, and that's one of the budget items in the capital that is down there, as you can see on page 24 and through there. One of the larger projects for that budget this year. Maintenance improvements are just something that we're going to continue to have throughout our years with these buildings. Employees this year, we are at 9. We hired the heat and air guy, we hired a grounds guy. I'm happy to say, I don't know if it's an everybody's, but we have a great team. I don't have turnover. I don't have many guys that, can't do every part of it. The grounds guys can work on the buildings. The building guys, like when the leaves start falling, I might shut down everything I can shut down and put everybody to blowing leaves when we get parking lots that are full. So go through and well-rounded guys, been here, several of them have been here for a long time, and different departments, and end up over. This is my third year taking care of this division, and I enjoy working with all the different managers that we have. They call, they ask. It's a challenge for us. Where I come up with a lot of our capital items that are there, beginning of each year, we do inspections on the buildings from the roofs to the exterior to the interior. A lot of it is the exterior that we look at, because if we get our rain penetration through the roofs, we're going to have interior problems. So a lot of roofing going to go on. We have some flooring also in that capital this year. And then the one big thing I want to talk about is the heat and air replacements. Since Kelly has come on, we have done more of a study as to when each month we go out and clean or change the filters in the systems. Kelly's writing down, continually doing a heat and air inspection on these units. By the year 2020, they will probably phase out our 22 gases, the Freon. By 2020, to have the majority of these R22 units changed out. So that's what this budget we have for the heat and air replacement. I'd like to see that stay so that I can continue to work on that on all the buildings to make it better operating, cheaper on electricity because you're more energy efficient on the units. Questions?
I have a few. Steve, how many are we talking about that have to be changed up?
As of right now, we're probably talking somewhere in about the 30 to 50 area. We haven't been to everything because Kelly just started in July, and he has this building and continue repair. It's hard to get him around to everything, but that's where I'm going to say right now. Things up front have been done, and majority of them are, here. I can use this as an example. We did 1, 2, 4, and then the 2 conference rooms in the back is 5 and 6. That's 4 units that we did. They were put in here in '86. This unit right above your heads is a 2014 unit, and we had a fan blade bust in it. I spent over $2,000 repairing that unit because the fan blade went out of warranty, just some kind of expense. The unit on the back here is a 7.5 ton unit. That's on the other end. It's an 1986. The front bar area, the kitchen, 1986. And there are 22 units. That's why we emphasize this building, because we had some areas that were warm during 100-degree days, and especially this big area here, we got to keep it to where we got newer units and get rid of our 22 gases.
You'll get quite a difference in energy savings.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Roofing. Do we put together something for all the roofing?
We inspect every building, and that's where I compile my roofing for the budget put in, the big ones. A lot of these roofs, you'll see on the last pages of that, you'll see $500,000, $600,000. Those are that my crew will do themselves. Bigger contract ones will be contracted out, but we do roofing. We have this. We're going to go into 2 halfway houses in Minnesota. They got some wood rot on them, not much, but we did Balboa last year and this year. one each year, but we're gonna do both of them in 19 and we'll put a metal on those. There's only one penetration for the commodes, for the vents of the roof, so we can go in there and put a metal roof and replace any damaged wood and then put a new paint job on it. And you'll see them on the back end where there's lower budget items that are really, that'll be in the operation cost of getting that kind of stuff done.
Okay, but on the bigger units, can you put out an RFP to do all of them, see what comes back? Because you might leverage your costs a little bit by.
We could put a bunch into one package and do an RFQ to get several of them, but really we're pretty close to having a lot of the big facilities already done that don't need replacement. Down the road, yes, another hailstorm or 5 each year, that, you know, works on your granules on a lot of those roofs. Isabella Clubhouse, octagon shapes, tough working, and it's not been touched. Isabella, we've already done, Granada, we've already replaced the roof on that one. So Isabella's another one that we have to look at.
Thank you.
Just for the new board members and maybe some of the people in the audience, I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago where we basically said, you gave an overview of the HVA system, you know what I mean?
HVAC.
Thank you. In the village, and the fact that they hadn't been touched for, well, you're mentioning 1986. Could you just give a brief overview of what you started with about 2 years ago?
What we started with is going around doing the inspections and finding out that the units have not even been literally cleaned. Since Kelly has come, we have come in and we've started cleaning units. We did an inspection trying to get all the serial numbers with inexperienced guys as to what size they were, what year they were. A lot of them tags are wore off that you don't know what is there for a unit. With the experienced heat and air guy, Kelly has come in and figured out a lot of these are 410A, which is the new gas. And some of them we thought, you know, they look bad. They haven't had a service call, and I probably jinxed myself. But a lot of them are updated, and we didn't know it. Now, when you got an experienced man in here that knows where the tag is and everything about it, we're finding out we're not as bad a shape as we thought we were, but we're getting calls, but it ain't nothing like in my first 2 years that I was here. Kelly has come in, he's taught some of the other guys to help. You know, if we don't have nothing pressing, I'll send 4 guys out to clean units. Kelly is my main guy that can go out and work with one of the other guys just to clean coals on the outside units. The winter months is where you come inside and you take a lot of your coals and stuff apart, and you can do a lot of cleaning while it's on the heating stage. So that we'll be doing continuous cleaning of the units so that they'll stay up and operational.
I think that's the biggest key, and I want to commend his team for, because I mean, what the board 2 years ago heard is that we weren't doing any maintenance, any preventative maintenance whatsoever. And that's the first thing that we tackled was how do we make sure that we're preventing those. We gained some electricity savings in several areas, so thank you and your team for that.
Stacy should see some savings in this building with what we have changed out in this building itself. Sure, the kitchen doesn't get used that much back here, but when it gets used, what is it? It's heat, it's a kitchen. You got an 86 unit in there that's not working as well as it should be.
This is probably a real stupid question, but I'm a newbie. Do we have insurance for any of this? Insurance for any roofing issues, or you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
We do, and we have utilized that just this past year on DeSoto, I believe. Anytime we have hail damage or any type of damage to the roof, just wear and tear, normal wear and tear, no, you know, that. But most of the roofs, by the time they're replaced, there is some type of hail damage. And as soon as we know that, then we contact them and they send their adjusters out. They get on, our guys go with them on the roofs, and then it's depreciated based on the age of the roof and that type of thing. But any place there is an opportunity for that, we certainly make that claim.
I know I just got a new roof.
Well, the insurance will be called on Isabella before we start on this, so that we can see if there's any savings towards us or anything. 'Cause you know, I'm not exactly sure the date that that was built, but it's in pretty rough shape, and there's no protection around that building at all. And before we start that process, we'll have the insurance come and look at it and say, hey, you got hail damage. Everyday wear and tear, they don't do nothing. But hail damage, if we had a 1-inch hail, the big 1-inch hailstorm that comes through, I'd ask our insurance to come check every one of our buildings. And that's all we got to do is contact them.
Do you have anything in your budget to address either the 19th hole or the Balboa Club?
What we have on the bottom on page 20, you'll see that we want to have a community discussion about the 19th hole up there and see what our members want to do with the building, what we make suggestions of. Everyone's got an idea. I have an idea. It could be a cart barn. Tear down the old cart barn, open up a wall in it, put a garage door in, take everything out of the middle of it, and make it a cart barn. There's all kinds of suggestions, and that's what we need to have a community like we did on the Balboa Club. Get the people together and say, hey, what do you want to do with it?
So there's nothing in the budget on either of those buildings?
Not for 19.
And do I
Cindy,
remember on that question, just to clarify, the staff actually did have some money in that budget, and I asked them to remove it until we had this communication, because there's some information that people don't know about, like our electrical units that are down there and some different things that we really need to kind of back up from before we just say we're demoing something.
And what Leslie's talking about as far as electrical, a lot of our electrical is in that building, some of it for the DeSoto Club, some of it for the lights, some of it for irrigation, some of it. There's great big panels in one back room, and we cannot get rid of it. It'd be too expensive for us to get rid of all that area back there. So it has to stay. Or we build a little shed around just that part of it.
And do I remember from earlier HVAC conversations, probably 3 years ago, the timing you're talking about, where the payback on those is really quite short, isn't it? When you replace some of those units and you use some of the new coolant technologies and the electrical savings, it comes back fairly quickly, doesn't it?
Yes, and I'm not a heat and air person, but it does save you a bunch of money, and the new gases that are there, they work more efficiently.
You mentioned, I think you did, I'm trying to hear here, spending more time, more people working on the garden and so forth. As I recall, Garden Club pulled back from what they assumed that responsibility. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Men's Garden Club? Okay. Just brainstorming. Are there any we should do away with?
You can answer honestly. You should answer truthfully, but just know they're all coming to you, all the questions.
There's several buildings that are, if you had all of the unlimited money, you'd replace, that we're not using them in the same function that they were built for back in the day. And there's a lot of them that I don't believe, we want to go tear anything down yet till we really figure out what we can do with it. Some of your buildings, we take buildings down, they're repairable. We went in and we removed them, capped the holes, and make sure there was no danger for a kid falling in a well or something like that. But, the 19th hole, we had 2 restaurants back to back in the day. Back in the day, they built it that way. One for a pro shop, one for a restaurant. You could utilize that building for something else or make it a green space. But out east end, no, there's nothing back there. Everything's working great. Here at the Coronado Center, this is an older building. There's a lot of maintenance that goes in this building because it's so old. You could remodel this thing. What are you going to use it for? You can make lots of things of it, and that's what Stacy, she's got all kinds of ideas. I got all kinds of ideas. It's wherever you want to go with it and whatever the community sees fit.
I got another one on the ground side. One of my bugaboos is traffic signs and how bad they look. get a group together. It didn't work out. I guess I contacted the department, found out what to use, but there's a lot of signs in the village that are hard to see.
Well, that would be Alan Alt with the street department. He takes care of all those signs. So
Shifted that over.
I shift that to
We
Mr.
are all the POA. We are all the POA.
This team thing only
Yeah,
goes so
team
far.
thing.
And we pride ourselves in the fact that some we will help out. My guys, we have power washers, we have generators, we can help Alan out. You know, and that's just something that time that we have, you know, and I got to try to plan something every day. I get here this morning, I know what I got to do. I got a schedule for them, and then it's, oh, here we got a phone call, this ain't working, or this. So it's something all the time.
I had one thing that Leslie just said. There was a group that in the neighborhood got together and they were going to march the stop signs and stuff. They started marching and everything disappeared.
And that's part of it with the older signs. There's no UV protection on them, right, and no reflection that it wears out with the UV rays. I'm sure Alan could address that also.
Any more questions or comments with Mike? Mike, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Page 20, and you'll also be heavily involved in the capital details section on this one as well. Flip them back and forth when you get there.
Yes.
Thank you.
We will lots of pages. And I'm going to throw out a disclaimer. I've got new glasses and I'm trying to get used to this progressive lens thing. So
That we don't teach your.
Okay, so as we said, this is the department, another maintenance, much like building and grounds. Our fleets just the light.
there is not a revenue number on there. We haven't figured out yet how to charge people for any services there. This department includes the supervision and the coordination of the vehicle maintenance department, the shop, and all of its personnel. And it also includes all of the fleet management related activities for procurement and purchase of equipment, vehicles, all the fleet items throughout all the other departments. And that is one of the neatest aspects about this job is you get to work with every department that's here. So that's very enjoyable. If we look at the division summary, compensation, we are showing a 2% increase for 2019 over 18. This is just strictly from merit and anticipated merit increases. It's a 3-person department, myself and 2 people in the vehicle maintenance shop. There are no changes or anything that we're looking at doing different there. On our operating expenses, if you will notice there, 19 over 2018, and that is always a tough. It's just, as you know, it's impossible to know when a vehicle or a piece of equipment will break down. We don't know what will happen, what the extent of that repair might or might not be. We've bought transmissions that we didn't. We've planned on bigger issues and ended up with $200 fixes. So that number has been trending, and Liz has tracked this for several years, also before I got here, and that number's been to adjust that number down each year. Plus, we're trying to be a little more lean and aggressive in what we do and how we do that. So we're able to take that number down and feel very confident about that. On the side, if you notice, our 2000 budget is showing $845,750
This is showing a 6% increase over 2018. Now, I will mention here, our original number for 2018 was a little over that 796 number, and we removed 74 after that and did some reprioritization. So technically, we had an approved budget of 870, and we with 796, after the adjustments. So this is showing us 6% over the actual number at the 845, 750. And if we'll look at a breakdown here, that's where we need to work. Of the $845,750, 320 allocated for our public utilities department. A standalone, however, they do have the revenue streams that do some of their own maintenance from capital expenditures. $124,000 of capital budget there will be
from public utilities and will not be subsidized funds. A complete breakdown here, as we said, public utilities is $324,000 of that number, which is 38%. So that leaves the other 62% that will be subsidized money. For public works, we have proposed $145,000, which is 17% of the budget. For recreation maintenance, $115,000, which is 14% of the budget. Building and grounds maintenance, $60,000, which is 7% of our budget. Police department, $96,000, which is 11% of the budget, and compliance, $25,000, which is 3% of the budget. And then that leaves golf for a total of $80,750 related to golf. Now, $24,000 of that will be in purchases, and $56,750 of that will be our continued golf cart lease program that we've been in, started. This will be our third year into our fleet cart lease program. This year will be Isabella. So that number there reflects 105 new leased carts for Isabella Golf Course. If you want to move on down to the capital details section, we can flip a few pages there. It starts on page 24. Just want to kind of highlight some of the larger ticket items there. Anything that says A135, that would be me. That's what we're looking for here. So starting on page 24 there and going down the list, the largest item that we have here that we're proposing for 19 is a tractor that is equipped with a side and rear flail mower for the Public Works Department. This allows us to do a better and safer, I will add, efficient job at mowing our roadways. And we have, I will say this, I'll give Alan and all his guys a little pat on the back, and my guys in the maintenance shop. We reconfigured the guarding system on our mowing equipment this past year, and I was talking to Linda over the weekend, and we've had like 2 claims this year from damage claims from mowing, which is just unheard of. Usually it is just claim after claim. People are driving by, the mower's go a rock, break a windshield, dent in the fender, or something like that. So we've made great strides there in reducing that, and I want to give those guys, credit for that. By switching to this side and flail mower combo, we'll be able to continue on into our residential areas. With the rotary type bush hogs, we only mow the main and arterial roads, secondary roads. We don't go into the residential areas with those mowers for safety reasons. So this will allow the single piece of equipment to mow either place, whether it be out on DeSoto or up into your neighborhood. Another large item that we have proposed for next year would be a new backhoe for our public utilities department. The line maintenance department that works on replacing our water leaks for our water lines and sewer
lines. We want to replace a 2002 model that has been downgraded to them from back in the days of golf course construction. It's time for an upgrade there. Another item we want to replace next year is a new dump truck for the rec maintenance department. They only have one truck that's available for them for all of the hauling that they do. And it's had very, very frequent visits to the shop for the past year. And also a couple of other, we have our two main vehicles in our line maintenance department of public utilities. One of those has a weak engine, one of those has transmission issues, and we have our fingers crossed on those, hoping that they survive until 2019, when something can be done there. And also we have a roller in the budget for rec maintenance. As you know, the rains that we have had this year have just been unheard of. The rain does a real number on our trail system, and that's one of our top amenities. And so those guys have really struggled this year in maintaining trails. We borrow the roller from the street department. The street department has been working diligently on replacing culverts, and everybody needs that roller at the same time. And it's a struggle to. We want to look at buying them, possibly a used roller or an attachment, that they can use for their own. Also, I will mention, it's not listed on here, our 3 sanitation trucks. We'll have a balloon payment on those coming up in July of 2019. Budgeted in our operating budget for that. So whether or not we continue, we have some options there. We can keep those trucks, refinance that, which would be less than the operating budget. Or if we choose to return those trucks and replace those with, perhaps some better spec, trucks for the village, we would still be at or below the number. So that's already budgeted in our operating side. So that's the reason you don't see that on here. And everything here that we have proposed, I will mention, is all purchases with the exception of the one fleet of golf carts for Isabella that's on a lease. We have extensive provision maintenance schedule set up. The guys in the vehicle maintenance shop keep track of that as well as I.
I misunderstood that Public Works or Public Utilities was 324 of the
Public Utilities was 324,000 of the
845,000. And you said they would be paying for it out of their funds.
Yes, that's correct.
So the total subsidy then is not 1.2, it would be down by the 3. I'm confused a little bit.
We actually show all of the fleet in here on purpose. So in terms of every piece of fleet that we bought, we show it here so as not to kind of cannibalize it in other places. But yeah, technically, accounting wise, Public Utilities paid for it.
That 324 in utilities also.
It is not.
No.
It is only here.
So in your monthly comparative statement of revenues and expenses, you allocate this as well as the building and grounds because they're not separate line items, right?
No, we don't allocate it. They have a separate line item. They're in administration.
They're in administration. Oh, okay, that's right. I didn't know if it was allocated or buried. Okay, and I know Leslie suggested this fleet manager position 3 years ago when you first came. What would you say for benefit of the association?
We're able to put our eggs into one basket. So every department doesn't have to worry about dealing with their own needs. They can concentrate on whatever that department does, whether it be recreation or whether it be, streets. They can concentrate on what they're good at and what they need to do. And then we concentrate on this solely in the one department. We're able to, for instance, we replaced several vehicles last year for 2018. Those RFQs didn't come, as one or two vehicles here and there from individual departments. We were able to put out one RFQ for 9 vehicles and ask people to bid on one or all. And we had the flexibility of, leveraging our buying power.
And are you able to schedule the use of that equipment better, so each department doesn't have to have their own pickup truck?
That's another thing that we've done. We've tried to cross-use equipment in various departments. So, in other words, if we don't need 10 backhoes, we can get by with 6, and departments can share. That's what we like to do.
I'd like to mention that this year we have instituted a rental. All rentals go through the fleet manager. Any department that needs a piece of equipment that we don't currently have, there's a form they fill out and it all goes through him. He negotiates, finds that piece of equipment from whatever company, and so that's worked very well, and then coordinates with all of the departments.
Could you explain the rationale behind your lease versus buy strategy?
Well, I think Tony can do that. On each thing that they purchase, as far as like golf, he'll be working on sanitation trucks. We do lease some backhoes right now. He'll be looking at all of that and putting all of that down. Does it make more sense for us to lease or purchase that equipment? And he'll do all of that analysis each time we are looking at those.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I look at, and Tony can certainly speak to this, but to me, if it is a routinely used piece of equipment that we need in high functioning order, that's high on the list of possible leasing. Because that way we know we're consistently, just like the golf carts, we're consistently getting good equipment, or just like the sanitation trucks, we use them every day. If it's something that we're going to use routinely, obviously we don't want to pay additional leasing expense, but you can add to that.
Well, I'll just use an example here. We have 2 picker carts in the proposed 2019 budget. Those are used every day, 7 days a week, but they're an hour and a half a day, maybe 2 hours a day, depending on how busy the driving range is. In my opinion, that's something we want to own. 15 years, we have some that that's why we need it. Our fleet carts, those are going out on a regular basis. They're ever changing. It's a very dynamic market, and I do feel that, and of course we ran all the numbers on that, as you remember. Money invested in 600 fleet cars spread across the village. That's a huge capital, investment there, when we can, easier handle it out of the operating expense side and just lease those. We're under full warranty for that whole 6 years. We turn them in, and as they're still under warranty, to the last day, and start over fresh. Case by case, I guess I would also say.
Tony, does the golf department have rotation on all the golf carts? Because I would think some days your golf carts are not going to be used at the end or whatever. Do they rotate them to make sure they're all equal miles?
Yes, they do. And as the guys there, fuel and wash, keep those rotated through the cart barn, which, if you notice, most of the cart barns, almost all of the cart barns, except for Cortez, are, open-ended. So as you turn, that will go to the other end, and the other ones will be moving out. So that way there's, the hours are all the way through.
I want to say one more thing. Tony has been very instrumental in our safety program this year and working with that, so we appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments, Mike?
Yeah, you're going to make
total vehicles that we own right now is around 128, 129 right now. Which is a lot to keep up with and maintain. I'll also add.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? Thank you, Tony.
Page 22, Police, Animal Control, and Compliance. Chief Middleton will talk to us about those divisions that are under his leadership.
Good morning. Out to Tony for making me look good in the Capital Division.
Yeah, that's right.
You'll notice those numbers. Compliance, animal control, training center. At the beginning of the year, you'll notice revenues increased 53%. That's due primarily to compliance. Okay, at the beginning of the year, I was given the compliance division, and I would like to give you a little information on Brad's project. We sent out 304 applied. Only 2. One's in foreclosure, the other one's getting a fine letter. So I think that was a real project. Well, all right, I'd look. Okay. Yes. All right. Our compensation was 2%, and then the capital 71% due to the vehicles being transferred over to fleet. That does include 3. I am the 17% of the budget. I'm asking for a new employee this year, a police officer. In the last 5 years, our police calls have increased 33%, and that's actual police calls. So I do have a need for another officer. Also, as you know, things are getting busier, and I need this officer so we can do some proactive things. Like attending some of our meetings. Going to concentrate on the trails this year. We're going to work on animal compliance. And I would like to put this officer with one of my compliance guys and put him on the trails. Saline County donated us a Gator UTV that we can use and get some of these folks to understand we have leash laws and need the dog's license and so forth. So that would be a big help to us. Excuse me. Animal sales, the registration sales were down last year. And I'm going to work with Liz this year to see if we can correct that. I believe that's the primary point of contact when you come in to get all of your decals and so forth. If we can do a better job educating the folks, I think we'll see those numbers come back up. And then my favorite talking point, the training center. We now have a Milo. The City Academy Alumni Association was able to procure a shooting simulator. And I think it's a great asset for that little facility over there. My guys were giving them some additional training. This is a high quality training simulator. And I think if you get the opportunity to utilize it, you're going to be impressed. So hats off to those guys. They've really been a great asset. And as they open this to the public, 100% of those funds come back to the police department for buying equipment and so forth that we may not otherwise have. So they've really been supportive, and I do appreciate that. Equipment, but I'm also going to do some research and see if I think there may be some opportunity. And also, I'm going to try something this year, radar trailer. How many of you drive down 70 East and when you see the flashing sign that says your speed is this, but our speed is this? How many of you hit your brakes? I know. Okay, except Leslie. Okay. But I think that would be a really good tool for us, and I think it will help slow folks down. We're getting a lot of calls in subdivisions, especially about speeding autos. Our streets are narrow, and we're having some issues there. So I really think this is going to be a good tool. And I'm working with my CPAAA group to see if we can come up with someone to help fund some of these. So I think there's lots of opportunities out there. And then there are car radars. My goodness, I'm working with 1980 technology there too. So it's time to start making some updates. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
This electronic radar billboard, whatever you want to call it, can that be cross-utilized with Public Works when they're working on a road and they need to?
Absolutely. This one is just the speed. It does not have all the letter display on it. This one is a small $9,000 unit, but it can be set up there. We can put the reduced speed, whatever you want it to be, and sure. And there may be a camera, may not be a camera attached to it. We don't tell all of our secrets.
What would be the cost of the one that could change messages?
It's about $15,000. It's a little more.
9,000 versus 15,000.
Yeah, depending on what all features you want on there. I mean, you can shoot for the moon. But the ones I was looking at that just had like the detour, it had limited capabilities of text, was about 15. But like I say, if you want more text, it costs more money.
Sounds like it might be worth a safety factor.
Jason and I both discussed that. So.
Yeah, one of the things I would say is, as he mentioned, he's really wanting to use this a lot in neighborhoods. So we have to also be cognizant of the size of that piece of equipment to actually fit in one of the streets. So trying the best of both worlds there with that piece of equipment.
Right.
Chief, your comment, you said the number of police calls is up 33%?
Yes.
So over the last year?
Last 5 years.
Over the last 5 years, okay. And what has been the nature of those calls going up? Are they more aid and assist, or are they criminal, or whatever?
They're more what I call real police calls. Disturbances are up 42% in 5 years. We have more people that can't get along, for whatever the reason is. And those are typically a 2-officer call. So that ties up a lot of resources. And we can't control those type calls. And that's also one of the most dangerous calls we can go on. So accidents in the last 5 years, up 45%. Yeah.
Why is that, do you think?
People are not paying attention. Most of them are single car accidents. We do a monthly report and reasons are unknown. Is it because I don't know. Leslie texting, yes. But people don't pay attention. They're preoccupied. And our roads are not designed to drive on. Seriously, if you look down, look up, you're in a curve. So it's a problem. Also, animal control or animal calls in the last 5 years, 149%. Yes. Barking dogs. Barking dogs. Dogs are running loose.
Dogs. We've had a lot of
problem with animals. So, and that takes up a lot of their time. So that's one reason I want the extra officer to see if we can kind of take care of some of those issues as well. So try to be a little proactive instead of reactive.
Okay, you also mentioned that 306 late compliance went out and 304 have been satisfied. How many in a fee, penalty, I mean, and how many of them were just satisfied by, oh yeah, here's my $20?
304 purchase accounts.
306 have not reached compliance. One of the houses in foreclosure, and the other one will be receiving a fine letter.
Okay, so I better understand it. So the 304 were just satisfied by paying
yes,
the fee kind of on a belated basis, but they paid it. Okay.
Right.
Question regarding the fees. Obviously, I'm pure as the driven snow because I've never gotten a fee for an incident or a fee for an accident, which that's a good thing. How is that billed? Does it go with the public utility bill, or how do you actually collect that money?
No, what that is if you have an incident, let's say that and I come over and you want to copy of the report, there is the fee, the $5 fee, $5 for that. If you have an accident, then 50 cents for a state report. Now the state report came
primary. All right. You answered the question regarding the increase of 53%, and I think that's wonderful because the compliance officers are really doing their stuff.
Yes, they are.
When somebody runs into one of your gates, is that your expense or is that another department?
Well, what we try to go do is with Mike, we go after the person's insurance if they have any that hit the gate. And our cameras, they work well. They've recovered a lot of money for us. And we've reclaimed a lot of that money. And it's really fun to watch. Back up, pull up, and then hit it. So,
since the cameras come in, we have recovered every gate that has been damaged.
See?
Through their insurance.
I'll see if I can get this question correct. I got one in the mail, an email. The question had to do with, this was from a policeman in New York, I think it was, Villager now. And one had to deal with ratios. This had to do with fire as well as police. It had to do with population and ratio, the number of policemen based upon population, etc. And ask, have the ratios really changed? Is that the reason we need the additional person and that cost? I remember, if I remember correctly, someone made a statement that said adding this policeman and maybe the fireman, we were using so much overtime. It's on the fire, okay. So you're next. Chief. But anyway, you're a different person. It's really focused on providing response. Is it a person, or are you just need the extra?
Well, it is, and
to fulfill your job.
That's kind of a twofold because, like right now, I have one guy on medical, one guy on workman's comp, and one guy resigning. So I'll be down 3 officers. Okay, but the primary use for this officer is going to be the proactive things. Now, that's not to say he may have to come over here and help fill in because we all shift and move wherever we need it. But that's not my focus with this one.
Do you have difficulty attracting the talent that you need to fill your ranks?
Absolutely. We're just like every other department. We have to have something to offer folks. And the one I'm losing now, he got a better offer. He got a take-home vehicle and a little raise in pay, and we're constantly trying to compete with the others. And it's very difficult. We don't have a tax base like some of the other departments do, the safety tax, so they can pay their folks more than we can. They can offer them more toys than we can. So yeah, it's hard.
Thank you, Cindy, because that's a question I forgot to ask. How is our retention rate?
We were full for about 3 months.
And this is all due to
I had
going to other departments?
2 officers retire recently, so that threw us down 2. But this is one of my younger officers, and he has found a better officer.
So the cost of training these officers then is
recouped before they have to leave, or before they leave? Okay, there's a state law that says if they leave within 3 months, they have to repay us for all of our expenses.
True that that some of our officers want to go to other areas where they can get more exposure to more types of police work.
I think it has young and in this
you want it to be like cops on TV. You want it to be exciting. Okay. The village is very unique. We're one of a kind. Now, we do have issues here, and we do make a lot of arrests.
Okay. Let's take Hot Springs, for example. When an officer goes to work there, he goes to his shift, and he gets on that adrenaline rush, and he rides it the whole shift. We go to a call of a disturbance with a weapon in my, and then we come back to my washing machine overflow, and then we'll go to, an accident. It's kind of tough.
Is there
have police officers understand that they're working in Mayberry?
Well, first of all, Mayberry is fiction. Okay.
Yeah, we're kind of close.
We're pretty close. We're
Used
pretty
to be
close. Yes, it takes a certain type of officer because we do need someone who understands the highs and the low in our demographics of citizens. It takes a special type. And you tell them, it's like working for your grandmother, okay? Because you have to have that mentality. A lot of our folks really need help. And then you go to a disturbance where you've got to fight a guy and fight for your life. So it's hard to, like I say, those highs and lows. So it does take a special person to work here. A lot of retired older officers find it hard because they're not accustomed to this setting. Not being a municipality, things here are totally different in a municipal setting. The policy.
Black and white. Can't let a policy lead into an unlawful arrest. So there's a lot of education in it already.
Chief, was it for me that the bulk of the issues that you have to deal with originate from people who have rights to be within the gates, that it doesn't come from outside, people breaking through the gates, shouldn't be here? What is that mix?
Yes, in the last few years, we're seeing a large number of,
and it's across the country, it's not unique to the village. We have problems. We have family members with, and we're seeing more of that, bringing you folks in so that you can take care of them. And with all these issues, now we have to deal with them. Okay? So it's not people break. Yeah, there are some of them who do get in who don't belong, but very inside the village, not association of some type.
This is probably a big issue, but I think a lot of these are right on the west side. Some equally, I mean, there's not a distribution that suggests it's over.
We have more problems with the rental in the west side,
right?
But our personal problems,
it's like I said, this is a nationwide issue. It's not just in here.
What I guess I'm targeting with the rentals on the west side, and I'm talking about the lower value rentals, people coming in and able to rent property for $300 or $400 a month. is there anything the POA can do in terms of background checks or legalities to prevent attracting the non-attractive individuals?
No, we cannot do background checks. It would be a violation of federal law. But what, through compliance, is okay. For example, if you're renting your place for $400 now, and we get you rent it for $700 or $800, maybe those folks may shift.
Let me just clarify something.
I can't answer that now because we get calls all over the village.
Okay.
So to say
But
they come from rent.
you don't recognize that as a pattern, just cheap rentals on the west side?
No, but that is an area where people are more condensed, so that may be why we have more calls, because there's more population
in those areas than on the east end. So that would stand to reason where populations would
crime per person.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, I'd like to explain your statement from the gentleman from New York. He's going off the NIBRS statistics. We do not report NIBRS because of the municipality. And they get those stats through the ACIC, the Arkansas Information Computer. And we share with, we don't qualify for our home as Hot Springs Village. So it wouldn't be fair to Garland County for us to put all the Saline County calls on their stats. So therefore, we don't report to NIBRS. So our information is not out there because we're not a municipality.
Where should you really be in the I see 37 on here, but where do you think the staff should be? What should it really be?
Well, we can always use more staff, but our times and our response times are still good. It averages. Could it be better? Absolutely. But that comes with the pay to services. We're answering all. There's very few ways.
We make an arrest, we have to take them either to Benton or to Hot Springs. And that's a 45-minute trip one way. And then by the time you do your paperwork, it ties the guy up for a couple of 3 hours. Okay. But there's not been an incident where we could say we cannot send an officer because we don't have one.
So I think when we get to that point, we really need to look at it, not answer the calls.
One question. Calls, how many are nuisance?
Matter of opinion. If your mailbox is and you're expecting a prescription or Ed McMahon to send you your letter, that's very important. It's still an
important call. So
I want to commend you
for your civil police academy. I'm an alumni. I enjoyed every minute of it, and I best outreach programs. Thank you very much for all that you put into it.
You're welcome.
You and your whole.
Thank you very much.
Chief Miller, Fire Department. And to the audience, we passed out question cards. If you need one, you can grab some from Stacy. We'll be doing those in just a few moments. We are on page. What page are we on?
Chief Middleton, real quick.
23. Okay.
May I make a statement on Chief Middleton's behalf? All of his employees are not police officers. So just wanted to point that out. Okay. Now we're looking at the division summary of fire and ambulance. And I'm going to tell you right now, on fire, we do not have any revenue. Okay, that's based upon our ambulance. That comes from the amount of $88.50 per year on each household here in Hot Springs Village that pays the subsidy for the ambulance service. Excuse me. That is in our revenue. That is $809,855. The compensation that we look at, that is our pay for, at the moment of 19 employees. We are looking to increase to 1. And I guess I can answer, I'm shaking, I'm sorry. A little not upset. I'm
Just remember, you don't have $1 million fire truck.
I don't
this
have
year,
$1
right?
million
So there's-
fire truck.
I mean, what's the big deal?
There's no big deal at all. To answer another question on the gentleman from New York that we got the email, we currently have 19 firefighters. Well, that includes myself. So there's 18 firefighters, 1 chief. We have 4 stations. We have the central station, which has 3 employees on it, or inside that station. And each additional fire station, we have 1 firefighter. That's 1 firefighter on that truck. Our average responses in the annual, let's see, 2017, we had 418 total calls. In 16, we had 432 calls. We have 15,000 plus here in Hot Springs Village that we serve, not to include our daily activities of testing fire hydrants, building inspections, life safety events. We test over 1,600 hydrants over a 5-year period. We do CPR training, fire extinguisher training. We help members out with our smoke detector program, where they call us and we help them to change batteries out when needed. You know, a lot of our members here are 60 plus. Some of them are widowed, some of them are widowers. And if they cannot make it up the ladder, we'll be glad to come over and help them change their batteries out. And the compensation and why we're asking for that 1 firefighter is an addition to our staff. We have increased a lot of overtime over this year and probably last year, but we're trying to decrease our overtime. We've had a few births, and we got a younger staff. We've got 2 gentlemen who had just, they've had children. We've had some guys that have been off, and we've had some sick times that we've had to cover these shifts. We have to fill the fire stations and fill the trucks. And this will help, because what we're going to do is we're going to put him on a different rotation than what we have now, and he's also going to be a floater. So if we have somebody who's off sick, we will be able to ask that gentleman or female woman to cover the sick or vacation time or PTO time that is needed. On the operations side,
Chief, while you're getting notes here, let me just mention to the board on the staffing. Actually, the chief asked for 3 additional staff, just to be transparent. And what we talked about was, 1, let's reduce the overtime. Let's make sure where we are. Let's get our hours to where they need to be, and determine whether or not there actually is need for additional staffing. So I just want to be transparent about that.
Thank you, Ms. Leslie. On the operations, we are asking, it looks to increase by 9%. What that 9% entails is due to our fire hose replacement. We have about 35 at the moment, 3-inch fire hose that we're replacing. That's actually, we test our fire hoses annually. That's another one of the things that we do. And we've got about 35 sections to 40 sections that have failed the water test. And what we do is we test them 5 minutes at 250 PSI. if we have a leak or anything like that, it has to be tossed. So that's an expense. So we are looking at also replacing those 3-inch with a large supply hose, which is a 5-inch in diameter hose, to where we'll have more volume coming to our fire trucks. And that will replace those sections of fire hose that have failed. We're also looking to add an ice machine at one of our stations at DeSoto, an exhaust system upgrade at the Cortez station. We're looking to add some extra personal protective equipment. Due to some studies, firefighters have received cancer or have gotten cancer due to their personal protective equipment. When a firefighter has one set of fire equipment and they come back from a fire, that equipment needs to be washed before it's placed back into service or put back on. And that's what we're looking at increasing is having firefighters with 2 pair of personal protective equipment, which is boots, or not boots, but turnout bottoms, turnout coat, gloves, and hood. That way, when they do come back from a fire, they can use that additional set while they're cleaning the other set of turnouts. So we're hoping that we can reduce the possibility of us receiving cancer or anything like that. Also, in that operation expense, the ladder truck lease or rent to own, lease to own, was moved from capital to the operations. So there you will see that 9% off. That's added to that 9% also. On capital, you can see in 2019 we saved the POA 100%. So no, we do not have any capital on this budget at the time. Also, I'd like to add, we do have an Act 833 account. That is an Act 833 of 1977 that we've received insurance funds on an annual basis. It comes on a quarterly basis. What that is when you pay your insurance, the returns from the insurance company goes to the state. It goes from the state and then it is to the counties per capita. The counties funds to their local fire departments or the fire departments in that county. In Garland County, from them, and then we receive a little bit from Saline. That helped us purchase a lot of stuff for the ladder truck that we received last year. We do thank you for the approval of that truck. That has purchased some battery power jaws of life. If you're not familiar with what's called a combination tool. The jaws of life is a spreader. This combi tool that I purchased, it's on ladder truck. And we don't have any hydraulic hoses hooked up to it, so it's a little bit more mobile. We can go down a ravine. We can take it into the structure or anything like that if we need to do a rescue. That was right around $12,500 that we've purchased with our Act 833. Some lights. We do all of our software upgrades, things like that. That's on an annual basis. Emergency 911. Dispatch 911, and then we use emergency dispatch for our calls. We use the Act 833 funds for that as well. We currently have 1,000 in the account. Is there any questions?
On the ambulance service, would you please tell the people? I get a lot of phone calls for if, like, I call 911 and say we need an ambulance. I know that it doesn't cost that much, but the difference between where does it come in, where our insurance comes in, or what if you don't have that type of insurance? How is that covered? Next part of that question. Do we have an ambulance in the village, one place or another, at all times?
Can I plead the fifth?
based on what you pay on your water assessment and all that for the ambulance, you are basically what your insurance don't pay off, you are billed. Okay, is that not right? That's more of a Ronnie question.
On the ambulance service, that fee you're paying on your utility bill is to have the service available here in the village. That's what we pay to have that. If you have Medicare private insurance, they accept what you pay. I mean, they accept your insurance. If you do not have private insurance, you're billed at 40% of the charge. So we put out a Q&A about once a year to our members as they're new in the village, so they get a bill for $1,000. And if they do have Medicare or private insurance, all number of the billing for LifeNet, and they will handle it through there. But if they don't have insurance, we bill 40%.
What about if you have to use the air flight?
That is included now. In fact, a couple of years ago, I went to our board meeting and they landed right at Ponds, and that has been added as a service for our members.
And what a service is.
Let me clarify, you don't get billed for that? For the med flight?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, because I clarify, really, a lot of people, they think that the amount that's being billed on the utility bill covers any type of transport. It doesn't cover the transport. It covers the fact, to your question, that there's an ambulance here available.
And to answer your question, the last question you asked, no. Sometimes we, at our department, we first respond alongside LifeNet, but we have been, is what LifeNet calls it. If they're on a call, we've had 3 calls in less than a 5-minute time frame. Those ambulances are tied up. They usually will call us. We'll have another truck coming from town to fill the gap.
I can, this year, this came up, and Jason met with LifeNet. They're aware that there have been a few times we have sent our first responders, not in a life or death situation, but they are monitoring this. And if it increases, then that'll be something that will have to change.
I can remember the numbers. Per capita insurance reimbursement you receive, do you have to apply for that?
Yes, ma'am.
And what type of data do you give them to apply for this? Is this considered a grant?
It's basically, it's basically like an audit. They send us, we get we fill out what we have left in the Act 833 account. We tell them what we've spent, send all of our invoices in, what we spent. They go through it, they look at it, make sure it looks right, and then we also request for the first of November, and we request more funds, and then put down kind of a wish list, and then turn that in to the state, and then the funds for the next year.
So that when you do receive it, then it's definitely earmarked for what your wish list was?
No, ma'am. It's not definitely earmarked for that, as long as it's being used for the things that they ask us to use it for.
And that's not something that you can determine or project that would be revenue?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
And Liz, can you talk to that?
We don't budget for the Act 33 funds or usage at all, just because at this point in time, Jason has no clue how much we're going to get next year. What we do with it, though, is kind of treated as designated funds, like a grant fund. It is maintained in a separate checking account. It is maintained on ledger totally separately in its so funds that we receive get recorded as revenue when we receive them, and when he uses the funds, they get recorded as an expense or a capital item accordingly with accounting rules, but we do not budget for them, so to speak. We do track them all very separately. But what you'll see sometimes, though, is maybe he didn't spend all of what he got in 2018 and 2018, and he'll spend it in 2019. Revenue expense might come in at a later time, so it is treated a little bit like a
compensation. In fact, is the adjustment or the reduction of adding a person producing overtime?
Pretty well. Pretty well.
So that's a big number. Yeah.
And I think we may have overestimated it a little bit in 18 as well.
On the, not on the overtime.
On the
It was actually on the salary part of it.
The salary,
2080.
that's right. We have a little bit of a overestimate there, but most of it was the overtime.
Any other questions for Chief? Appreciate you, Chief.
Okay, does anyone else in the audience have any questions? I have a couple right here.
Applause was not for you, just because you came in the door at the right time.
Bruce is here, everyone. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now some of y'all had to bring these with y'all. All right. Let's see. Is there a central administrative person qualified to research availability of grants and write effective grant documents for police, fire, lakes, etc.? Or is it left up to each department? We do not have a central grant writer. That would be a nice position to have, and for the most part, our fire and policemen, they understand their connections and where their grants come from through their professional affiliations. And I'm sure, Brad, you're using your connections with our sister properties. What is the ISO fire protection class now? 4? Okay. I remember like a couple years ago it went down, maybe 3.
5 to 4?
Yeah, a couple, 2 or 3, 5, 4 years ago, maybe went from a 5 to a 4. 2015. Yeah. Chief Miller, what's the response time for fire and EMT? I'm not sure. Do you know the EMT? But
EMS, I did not know.
Okay.
Fire, I think last month it was 6 minutes and 37 seconds.
6 minutes, 37 seconds on fire. We don't have that on our emergency. Okay, new to the village, why don't we publish the total outline of the division expenses by activity? How many line items are there, Liz? Over
on a line item basis, you're looking at, I know it's 3,000.
Yeah, and so individual accounts over 10,000 if you were going by each.
And there's 75 to
the thing for everyone. If you look at if you look in the overview section on pages 6 and 7, if you were here in the first presentation, I'll give everybody just a minute to get to those pages 6 and 7. What you heard Liz talking about when she went over these 2 pages, they basically represent sources in excess of $50,000 and expense sources in excess of $50,000. And they pretty well represent, I'm going to say at least 95% of everything we do. So you are seeing on a basis types of activities. Most of what we do is very minimal.
Well, and to add to that,
We report quarterly the revenue, expense, and capital to give you a total subsidy by each of those 75 divisions. So, yeah. So our next one will be in our October board meeting for September's close. Yes, ma'am. Yep. So if
The person that asked that question, be sure to come to the October board meeting or check out the October financials, and you'll see a little bit. Is there a pro forma for the outside pool? Yes, there is. You're going to make an appointment with Liz to review that document. Why was the gate access project given to something from a Florida company? What we found is most of the large their offices are actually in. So when we did that research, that's the majority of where those people came from. And the pool to Kansas, again, Kansas company because of their experience. Building pools.
We love our local vendors, and we always give them the opportunity to bid, but we aren't going to necessarily always go with either the low bid or local if that doesn't make the best sense. This question's for Magdi. Can we give throwaway food to the needy? Magdi, are we able to give throwaway food to the needy?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Something you can add to your list to maybe look at if there's an opportunity there. Excellent. Hmm? You're not needy, Chief Miller. Good grief. Can we leave feedback cards for diners to tell us their problems with food service, price, hours, days of operation? One of the things I'll say is you guys just did a survey not too long ago, but haven't you been talking about dining cards? Okay, that is definitely something we're looking at. Woo, this one's a good question. Okay, can we eliminate one golf course without the word end? Each location, too many golf courses. Decision like that, we could be at that point at some point in the future, but I would rather see us attempt to increase our visitor and tournament play before we do that. Because of course, if we thought we've seen division up to this point, we're probably going to see it then. In the capital budget data, why do you not group by applicable departments versus descending order by cost? That's a good question. One of the reasons we do that is because we want to make sure that the board and that the property owners see where most of our expenditures are. Also the staff, myself, I have up to a $50,000 spending approval limit. So I want to make sure that it's definitely very clear what things are outside my approval limit. It's easily sorted other ways, and on occasion we do that. This is on recreation. Why are we not showing year-end 2018 projected revenue and expense and capital versus the 2019 budget? I don't know, we just didn't present it that way. We produce monthly financial reports, so we assume that most people know where we're standing from our monthly reports. This is the same question about why there's no detail in the budget package. Again, be sure to look at those quarterly financial reports, and you'll see that tracking. And any member in good standing is welcome to make an appointment at any time with our controller to get additional details. Is the large lake for Balboa Drive a result of delays in performing it, or is it the size of the lake when it last dredged?
I would say probably a combination of both. Has it been dredged? Years since it's been dredged. I think we're supposed to be on like a 7-year cycle
or something in that case. So it went about twice as long as it should have. Nevertheless, it's a 946-acre lake, and so it's a significant undertaking. Building and grounds. This is the same question. Again, where are you projected to end 2018 actuals? I would invite you to go and visit with Liz. Numbers, please go visit with Liz. Fire, is it still not clear? Oh, it is still not clear to me just how life flight is paid for. I was told it was our water bill regardless of our personnel insurance. I had called and spoke with Ms. Mayhood about 2 years ago. What you're paying for in your water bill is for the service to be available, not necessarily the transport aspect of it. Fire. How will a major forest fire get handled? Chief Miller? Put it out. Good answer. Good. Is that part of your disaster? Major forest fire? Have you done one of those simulations?
We get that question asked quite a bit because we do live waterways and everything like that. We have a lot of fire breaks. And we hope that we will not that we'll have a major.
Okay, you can stay right there because this one's going to be for you too. Our firefighters has part-time jobs. Do we?
95% of our firefighters do have second jobs. Whether they're paid enough, we Google it. Yes, I believe they are, but they have a lot of time off as well, so that helps increase their subsidies for their families.
Yeah, my dad was a retired Little Rock fireman, and he owned a business for many years. I mean, when you're on 24 and off 48, you do other things.
You
so
have that benefit of having a second job as well.
That's right. And I understand our director of HR has helped you with market rate studies on. I think we're at a good point. We may even pay a little above what those
just a
surrounding.
little above starting salary firefighter.
Be going down by 15% and adding one employee. Two things: we overestimated the compensation last year, but even importantly, we are addressing the staffing or the scheduling of our firefighters in order to reduce overtime. Before we spend money on finding signs, please consider cutting down on the 3 to 4 at most. If it's big, them and have signage pointing to. I mean, that's I think over the 26,000 acres, the number of neighborhoods is at 9. Yeah, 9 neighborhoods were identified. It would take us redoing all of our marketing as well. So unless there's a really good reason to once again change our neighborhoods, not sure we'll go to that. But I like that suggestion that we be very, very careful about putting those wayfinding signs up. I think this might be incorrect. And Stacy, listen to me. On behalf of Trails, I have lived here 3 years and been on the Trails Committee almost 3 years. During this time, we have had 0 capital dollars. Haven't you guys done Trails each year?
We have maintenance money on Trails,
Okay.
but not capital.
Okay. It may just be an accounting
thought process. There has been money spent. How much each year?
So we average probably $20,000.
20,000 trails. So I think, where is it? Putting in those types of things are not actually capital.
They are actually on the capital list, and they are still on there.
They get listed and then they get moved out, right? Yep, good. Okay. Please determine overall building plan.
Any CMP plans, for instance, determine what to do with the Balboa 19th hole Coronado before starting Town Center at Woodlands. We have too many buildings on.
I agree. Consolidating the departments like the small ones. You know, they used to all be kind of lumped together, and it was very, very difficult to understand where we were kind of bleeding, which areas we were bleeding in, and what subsidies we were doing. At this point, we have actually taken the opposite approach, which is to expand the number of departments to make sure that down to down to the library, down to the fitness, what those revenues and costs are. This is for Chief Middleton. What's the police service fee for state sales? Police for state sales.
There is no police
I asked the question and I just saw it on the fee schedule. And I
Let's look, Melinda.
What page are, oh, back in the fees, right? Page 51. Page 51.
Yeah, because we don't charge a fee. If we go out, we don't charge it. There is, they have an annual permit.
That's an annual permit for those people who. So it really shouldn't be on the police service fees. I think we got it in the wrong spot. I think it's an administration fee.
We'll look into that.
Yeah, good. But basically, it's one time a year that you pay to be able to put your state or auction sale signs up. That looks to me like a permitting inspection. Are you trying to ask a question?
I was just going to mention, it looks like the heading on that page, or that's a dated page. On page 15, it says 2017 versus 2018 proposed.
What is a fire service fee? The fire policy, $577.50. Page 51. It's on the public safety. Linda, you have any idea? That looks like a carryover from a long time.
The only thing that I know that was, and I don't think we had any, is absolutely a fire policy, and if we have burn bans or whatever, to assess a fee for someone.
They were burning in their fire pit when we have a fire ban.
Right, using it properly.
Okay, using a fire pit improperly would be one example of we would fine you for potentially creating a fire. Okay, this is MACD. I understand the wait staff is difficult to get and keep. Is it true they are drug tested? Yes. We do random drug testing here as well.
this is on really, if you have questions related to our testing policies, I would recommend that you speak with our Director of HR, Shawnee, and she can answer that. It's probably not appropriate to talk in public about. Seems high when half tables and chairs seem relatively new. I agree, location with kitchens, it seems out of line. Was that what you budgeted, Maggie? Okay. So that is, thank you. Seems excessive.
Some number that was put in there because we're going to take out glass countertops and stuff that's there and rebuild the whole area. And Tom has got some kind of design there that he's going to get with me on.
You're telling me is it might be less than that?
Yeah. No, we're going to go with probably a composite countertop, different cabinets in there, make the actual golf area smaller, maybe more for the restaurant.
This is for Tony. What percentage of regular maintenance on vehicles is done in-house versus outside? What percent, same percentage for major repairs?
I don't have it down to an actual percentage, but I can tell you for 2018, we've outsourced 3 for equipment. It's all
How many repairs have you done for 2000, same time period?
We're in the 700 range.
High average, so pretty it internally with your team. Okay. $32,000 for a police patrol vehicle compared to $45,000 for yeah, patrol vehicles. There's some benefits to being on the police force. That's one of them. Building and grounds. And this is probably a question for Ms. Shawnee. It's an HR question. Are you paying key employees like the one that was discussed, the new building and grounds person, enough? You say we are paying more average. Require all shoreliners to post lot, block, and address on their dock, and we've actually talked, or at their cost. We've actually talked about that because we think it might be inconsistent and it would not serve its purpose. Lakes, what department is responsible for dam? And maintenance between you and Jason Temple's team. Study last done on the dam integrity. Linda.
Balboa and Cortez, the high hazard dams.
Right, we are required by law, by ANRC, to have our any high hazard dams, and we're working on that project right now to update our dams, and that should be done by October.
And when was the last time you said annually? So last year as well?
We do, they come over and inspect our dams. We pay our fees, our dam fees, but balance group and
damn beef, you get me. But yet they are inspected every year, and there's only every few years do we have to actually revise the plan.
Charge budget is done, they get most benefit of living on the lake or paying usage fees too. Not something that we
before, but of course Brad and I have been talking about the various ways that we might ensure that all of our amenities are properly funded. If you let people park a boat in their yard on a trailer with proper screening, more people would own boats and you would collect more fees.
Okay. Hey, Leslie, can I ask, back on the prayer that this is common property, it's available for the entire village, for visitors, for non-resident property owners as well. Would that not be a reason why you wouldn't necessarily charge the shoreliners?
Yeah, I mean, that
too. I don't know. The thing is, there has to be an answer there in terms of how do we properly fund our lake, and I don't know exactly what the answer is yet, but that's okay.
visitor trailer donation system.
4,000 last year, about 4,000 the year before, and we're up to a little, right at 6,000.
So this year that has actually netted so far 6,000, and it's been averaging about $4,000, which is not major. Why not charge at the gate for visitor boats? We talked about that and debated those different things. We felt like that would be a slowdown at the gate. So instead, we do compliance on that.
A lot of those day passes are owners that don't buy the annual permit.
Yeah, that's true. See a lot of boats out there that have day passes that also have a sticker for the village, meaning they don't really want to buy annual. They just want to use it when they use it. Why not just stop all subsidy to restaurants and get out of the restaurant business? No, we pay no subsidy to McDonald's, El Jimador, etc., which are doing very well. I wish it were that simple, but that would mean closing the restaurants and at least 4 of our golf courses. Fitness center, what percentage of revenue comes from insurance versus fee paid? This goes back to Stacy, the question about the Silver and Fit or whatever. So what percentage of your revenue comes from insurance today? 39%. 39%. Okay, just a couple more. We're still hanging in there? Okay. Recreation. How much revenue do we lose by giving free passes to volunteers or half cost to employees versus just charging everyone full rate and paying $10 per hour versus minimum wage to employees? How much revenue do we lose by giving free passes to volunteers?
So we have 13 volunteers at the fitness center.
Come up here, Stacy, or take Bill's microphone. That's fine. Okay. Other one.
Oh, it's dead.
Yeah, it has been dead.
All right. So we have 13 volunteers at the fitness center currently. They work 3 shifts per month, and their membership basis for the fitness center is provided at free or at no charge as long as they work those shifts on a monthly basis. So it's not an annual membership. They have to work each month in order to do that.
At the library, we have 2 paid staff members. We're open 6 days a week. We have 50 volunteers who basically keep the library open. Those volunteers get a $9 library card as their benefit for working 2 shifts per month. 2 shifts per month, and I could be a shift off on that one. Those are the only 2 locations currently that we have volunteers who are working. As a benefit for employees, the fitness center is provided at no charge. Many, and I would say probably 75 to 80% don't take advantage of that, but the 20% who do are those who do take advantage of that. They're also on our health insurance, which means when they're healthier, and we're a self-insured health insurance plan, when they're healthier, then our health insurance plan is healthier, and therefore, overall to the budget, it's a great benefit to that.
Good, thank you. All right, Chief Middleton, do we get revenue from dog leash violations? Do you issue warnings first?
We do issue warnings, and no, the county, that's a county ordinance, so all funds go to the county.
County ordinance, any ordinance like that, the counties get the funds for that. That's one of the costs for our gates, one of the costs for being a private community. Are our facilities compliant with the ADA? Buildings, parking lots, landscaping, communication, etc. Our facilities are in compliance in accordance with us being a private community, as recently, I think, described by you in a board meeting. So, why did we not put totals, including a total number of items under 50K on page 6 and 7? Everyone has a view of the full year. Again, what you're looking at on page 6 and 7 is probably 95, 96% of our entire spending. And if you need more detailed questions, Liz will be able to answer those for you. Any other questions that didn't get answered?
Liz, I will say I didn't total 1 column on that page, so I can add that total in a version 2 that we publish.
Okay.
It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Got 1 question out there.
Well, you did answer the 2 questions I asked about. Since the fleet and building and grounds and departments are connected, everything they do is connected to some facility that is under some other department. Why are they not on a 100% bill up?
They used to be, and we lost complete control of what those costs were. And so now we keep them all in the department by themselves. They actually all used to be allocated out. That was what Cindy was talking about before. We brought that back under 1 division each so that we could see across the board. That's how we now know exactly how many heating and air units, for instance, as opposed to individual department directors.
You're misunderstanding my question. I'm not saying you shouldn't consolidate it under there and keep track of it that way. But if you're going to look at the cost of that amount as a side, so that everyone in budget will know that I've got to raise more revenue to do this job.
At the point that we get past all of our deferred maintenance and it's really a picture of this to operate their particular facility, we're allocating that back out. But right now we're in such a reactive mode and have so much deferred maintenance that it would look unreasonable. It wouldn't give us a good picture anyway.
All right, then board, it's up to us. We're up in terms of any board discussion relative to, as I recall, the last our last meeting, alternative for revenue. What it look like in terms of
The impact on association equity, cash, reserves, etc. But you were asking for a detailed layout of that. And then the land strategy, which we will talk about in executive session. Are there any other?
Just clarify, the reason I'm concerned about revenue, and there's been a corrected number in our set, Liz can speak to in a moment, but the way it looks currently, the projected revenue increase between the 2018 and 2019 budgets is at 1.3%. That considering our demand for working down the deferred maintenance seemed a bit lower than what I'd hoped to see there. When there's been a correction to the 2018 budget number such that that 3% is really more accurately 0.6%, so kind of exacerbates the problem. So to me, I feel as though we ought to double down on our revenue number so that we can revenue's sake. Notion we had, that's not the point at all. It's for the express purpose of trying to whittle down that deferred maintenance more than just $4 million. Recalling that the CMP called for $19.6 million of deferred maintenance capital to be addressed in 2019, and this budget is right. So keep me on. If I've got my facts right, that's what concerns me. It's kind of sister issues of top line revenue and the contribution to the capital.
On that side, I mean, as we look at it, we've got assessments. We can only with growth and whatever the percentage we have to deal with this. The others would be, the other revenue streams are, of course, fees. Specialists, well, but in the budget, revenue source would be, well, right, it could be a special assessment, but within the budget we have fees, we have land sales, I guess, would be another one-time revenue source. What other options do we have?
Maximizing our efforts to draw more people into the village, whether it's through golf spots or discovery packages or anything that brings more people in that can translate into some of those other.
Yeah.
So large tournaments, one of our main limiting factors is lodging. So there are some things here that are limiting to us that would create, in my opinion, a bad experience if we were to attempt to kind of bite off some big large tournaments that now everybody's spread out. That's the reason why you see us taking this very incremental step. We need to solve that issue. We also need to understand whether or not the membership supports the 5% cap. That's going to tell us other revenue sources that exist.
To do what we need to do on just 0.6% increase in revenue next year without looking at what other opportunities there are to maximize that, particularly on the backs of our non-property owners or non-resident property owners.
Can you explain that? What do you mean on the backs of non-residents? Because we're not putting anything on the backs of non-residents.
Like external fees for people who are not residents, or non-property owner. I'm not trying for outside play and bring in revenue.
So are you asking that someone come up with a plan for an increase in fees or property sales? I mean, what is it you would, or do you have a plan that you would recommend?
I don't have a plan, and I don't feel it's appropriate for a board member to come up with a plan as much as just to identify that as I think is a gap in the budget currently, that if there are opportunities to maximize revenue beyond the 0.6% increase budget over budget, I think that should be looked at.
Any other discussion? I think
one thing. I think we miss a point sometimes about, we have a lot of maintenance here. And every time you reduce maintenance, you put money in your pocket. That's my way of looking at it. Buildings and grounds, they've got a tremendous problem. When you start talking about stuff that's been here since 1986, I'm sorry, but you're paying a lot more expense than you should. So I think we're making strides. Our revenue per golf round was up this year. I think next year could be hopefully a better year than this year, because this is the worst one I've ever seen from a weather standpoint. So I think there's just a lot of good things happening. Jason Temple, what he's doing in sewer and water, we're getting close to really realizing something there. Is it perfect? No, it's never going to be perfect. We're 26,000 acres. I mean, let me tell you, it's hard to keep track of all the things that get breaking here every day. But, so as we get through some of this maintenance, we will reduce the requirements on staff, and that's a big thing.
I completely agree. That's why that's a top priority for me, to maximize what we're doing with regard to whittling down deferred maintenance.
I don't know that there is a significant, I hear what you're saying, and we will certainly go sharpen our pencils, but if you look on page 6 at the revenue sources in excess of 50,000, there really is no significant place. We have no control over assessments other than if we were to increase our sewer fees, I don't know, our water rates, we could increase our water rates, and we could do more projects or put more in reserves for that. But again, how much of dollars that we solve, and the only way we're going to solve that is incrementally over time by growth. And to create some other issues for ourselves. So, if any board member has any suggestions for a significant impact, I don't think the answer is touching our little fees, because I don't think that's helping us.
I actually think by touching the fees causes a little bit of bad will. I think some people have felt like they've kind of been priced out of the market in many areas anyway. Again, I would, if there was another way, I wouldn't want it to be necessarily on the back of the members, resident or non-resident members. Increasing the fees for the visitors might price ourselves out of that also. It's a quandary. It's a quandary, but I think that with Mike's infrastructure and deferred maintenance, we're doing a bang-up job for a while.
Right. But again, nearly $20 million for next year was identified, and we're making a $4 million ding. And I just like to make sure that we're putting our estimate to Mike's point, and we all agree to this. Dollars saved in deferred maintenance will pay dividends over time. So,
comment. I can only speak for recreation and trails. I really have confidence in the department or the director. They're looking at things and maybe that's a very large expense. But doggone it, they just haven't worn out. They were scheduled to be replaced, but they haven't worn out. So they're going to be put off a year or two. And there's many things they have done because they just, I think that
finding those priorities.
Yeah, don't interpret my comments to be, I don't think they're doing a wonderful job. I'm just kind of looking holistically at this. That says, you know, a $4 million ding and a $20 million event didn't feel sufficient to me, that's all.
From my perspective, what I heard here today and last week is our pricing on fees, et cetera, are priced at market. And our overall goal is to protect and create value. I think the value, anywhere I've ever been, value is determined by how we compete with others for the same amount of dollars. So I think from my perspective, the fee base are being determined on the right basis. The issue is whether or not we want to increase the amount of the assessments over time, or we have to accept the fact that we, you know, if we would get caught up in 3 years, it's going to be the 19 or 20 million. But the reality is we don't have the money to do that. And so it's going to take longer unless we're willing to come up with more either houses, rooftops, or we're willing to pay more in assessments. And it's that simple and it's that difficult. It's an emotional issue, but we're trying to play catch up. For whatever the reasons are, we put off maintenance much too long. So, you know, I agree. I wish we could come up with some more revenue, and I would love to say, Leslie, get it done. But that's not, we're either going to be at market or we're not. We're going to provide a value or we're not. And then the rest of it is up to the property owners, in my opinion, as to whether or not they're willing to help fund catch up, or will live with the fact that we only have so much money and it will take so long to get it done. Other than that, I don't know that we have any, other than selling property, and we'll do everything we can to do that, to come up with it, but I don't know if there's any other choices.
Yeah, I think selling property is certainly an option, right? We said 30 lots last year, we're saying 30 lots this year. I mean, that's kind of status quo is one way. You mentioned we're at market for fees, but we just identified that in lakes, we're not at market for boat fees. We mentioned a week ago that we're not probably at market for sanitation.
To revenue sources there may be, because I just don't think making a $4 million ding and a $20 million problem year after year, if growth may happen, the declaration vote may go favorably, may go our way, that's fine. But we need to be thinking ahead. Are we making the maximum amount of dent with the tools that we've got this year so that the hill is not as steep next year?
So with that, you're going to say something? Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, we have a trust issue with our property owners. And we really attempted in this budget, as Nancy put it, to really go back and hear that feedback and say, you know what, we will prove to you our needs. We will take this year. We will be very conservative about our revenue streams. We will do everything that we can to cut where we can cut. We will wait to hear from you on the vote, and then we will decide. And so I think taking that step, I hear what you're saying, because I want to overcome that as well. But I think taking that step will go a long way in helping to repair the trust and support of our property owners, and that's more important to me than hitting that $20 million in the first year.
Any other?
I just have a final comment, and I'd like to give my view as a property owner and as area board director. I'm just very impressed with all of the directors, the amount of work that they go through in putting all these budgets together. Even though this is my third year seeing this, I have learned so much today.
all the
Good for you, good on you. And anybody else? Okay, if there's not.
Yeah, just one other thing. Liz mentioned that there's some corrections to the packet, and I think she's going to be reissuing some of that. Is that right, Liz?
Yes, ma'am, and along with some of the things that you requested, like the full effect on the balance sheet, and Stacy had a fee for the
mini golf, little things like that, that we'll go back and get corrected and issue a version 2 this week, I would say.
Okay, and then just a quick question. On pages 6 and 7, I'll call 28. What is your
On things like angels, we've already sold those and they're in an accrual pot. So I actually went back and looked at that and looked at how much money I had left to accrue throughout the things like we looked at our with
fitness center, things like that. We took it, an average of the monthly of how we were trending year to date.
Okay, so let me just call out a couple of extreme examples. On residential water, the 2019 budget is 20% higher than the 2018 projected. That doesn't pass the smell test to me, but maybe there's a good reason. Also on green fees for members, the 2019 budget is 37% higher than the 2018 projected. And again, that doesn't pass smell test, so I think I'm interpreting it wrong or something.
Go back and tell me, what was the first one?
The residential water. The 2019 budget is 2761. 2018 projected is 2307. That's a 20% increase. And greens fees is a 37% increase when I compare 2019 budget to 2018 projected. And so my question, like a week and a half ago, was, what am I missing here?
You're saying the 2019 budget is higher than the 2018 projected on water. Is that what you said?
By 20%, okay. Residential water.
So in August, this year has been a very wet year. I would say one of the things is it's based, is Jason here? No. One of the things is our water is based on the average usage, on a specific usage, and it may or may not have been used to that extent in 2018. Also, Liz, did you do is that 7 months or 5 months, or did you do the
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look and see at what point in time I had the current year data through that I've been projected from. When we first started pulling all this together, it was actually June. So
so you weren't looking at the heaviest usage month anyway. I think the answer is, let us double check that.
Fair enough.
But Liz has a very detailed sheet of usage versus fee. So there's a number behind that. But that's a good question.
Yeah, and the third one is cart rentals is going up 24%. Greens fees for non-property owners is going up 21%. Those just seem like high increases and these are all revenue numbers, but overall revenue is only going up 0.6%. So it just wasn't, like I said, it wasn't making sense. So just look at it. Yeah. There's corrections.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see. Yeah.
Okay, next steps. One will be to meet on the land strategy, and then final approval coming up in our October 17th board meeting. Unless there's any more comments.
So typically after this meeting, at this meeting, by this meeting, we've heard from the board if there are significant changes to be made to the budget. So I would just poll the board really quickly to see, is there anything that came up that you're thinking we need to take another look at? I mean, I understand the revenue, but specific changes that you're wanting to see us, because otherwise what we'll do is we'll come back to the October meeting with the exact same recommendation unless you all say there's a change.
Obviously, we're going to get the updates, and then I might be able to comment to that.
So are you saying you're not intending to look at revenue? Or you're going to submit the revenue that's been submitted to us so far?
Yeah, I don't know of any additional at this time. That would be my recommendation to come back unless you all agree on a specific change somewhere. And you don't have to answer it today. Just know that at least a couple of weeks before the meeting, you need to be in some sort of agreement if there's some change to make, so I can bring that document back to you. Right.
Yeah, when can we talk about that? Or is this, I mean, are we to a point where if we're not going to submit a revenue change, then am I as an individual board member left with, do I vote to not approve? Okay.
Well, again, we put them out there. I think if you're going to disapprove, if you're not going to vote, you have that right and vote for it. But I do think that we need to offer some suggestion. You can't do anything with the assessments. So what we're doing, just like an expense, I don't like that expense in recreation. I don't like that expense in golf.
Okay, on revenue, where do you think to give management a directive?
Through every presentation spoke to that each time. Every time, like when Cheryl came up and talked about land sales, and they said 30 lots last year, 30 lots this year. Why can't we expand that? Those are examples of where I think maybe it could be. There might be good reasons not to. But that's where I enumerated all the opportunities
Well,
I identified.
I think did anyone take notes on that?
I can summarize if
I
that
think
would
you
be
should.
helpful.
I think you should have that kind of directive, just like on expenses. We need to make that specific request, and then you can submit that. Anybody else for management, we say this, we're
You can put more, we can put more stretch in it. But as a board, I think we need to have consensus on that and what our expectations are. So I would encourage each one of us to put down where we think revenue should be a stretch, or we want to see it up. And then we can give that recommendation to management. Then we'll all get measured on it. Okay, through April of next year for me. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Well, Leslie said something that was very important here, right? And that is a shared accountability, which we should all avoid at all costs, right? So we don't want that. What? About shared accountability, because she said we can all be evaluated on it now, where that's not the model we have. The CEO gets evaluated. So if providing a directive to the CEO results in shared accountability, we should avoid that at all costs, and we should just vote it up or down.
So the bottom line is, if you have recommendations for increasements in assessments, or I mean not assessments, but in revenue, please bring those to the table so we can give them to Leslie and her team in time to adjust the budget accordingly. Any other?
You didn't warm me up. I got to take a break.
Okay. Unless there's an objection, the meeting will be adjourned. No objection, the meeting is adjourned.